ممكن خلي بالنا من المايكات يا جماعة. I'm sorry about that. I was just because not all the Middle East, community knows who's Mark Melody,
Oh yeah,
actually.
not a lot of people. That's okay.
Um, but when we first met, you already told me that you've been working and collaborating with so much from the early, stuff that you did assist with people in other, you know, Arab countries. This is what because
Yeah,
I wasn't aware of that. This is why
yeah,
I'm aiming for this introduction. Yes,
perfect.
yes. Okay. So we have like, you know, 7 minutes and we first start.
Awesome.
So
I'm gonna grab my coffee real quick. I started brewing it, but I didn't
yeah,
finish it. So I'll grab that and I'll be right back.
yeah, definitely. ازيكم يا جماعة، عاملين ايه؟ رجاء لو اي حد يعرف يبعت اللينك للناس. محاضرة النهاردة مهمة جدا. كمان فيها ساعات تعلم مستمر. هي هتبدأ ان شاء الله 7 بالظبط زي ما انتم شايفين، يعني حتى المحاضر قاعد مستنينا. ان شاء الله أداة التقييم اللي هنشرحها النهاردة هي أداة تقييم مهمة، لأن زي ما أنا قلت هي هو مستر مارك مطورها مخصوص. وهو بالمناسبة هو محلل سلوك و يعني توحدي، متشخص طيف توحد. وكمان هو أسهاماته كبيرة جدا في المجال. يعني أكتر من 20 سنة خبرة. وكمان هو مطورها من خلال شغله، وبرضه هيشرح لنا النهاردة. يعني بقول له عايزين نفهم ازاي جه أداة التقييم دي، وازاي هنتكلم عنها النهاردة، جت منين. وهو قال ان هو هي يعني موجود ده في الشرح النهاردة. تمام. هو كمان يعني حضروا نفسكم وخليكم مركزين، لان هو بيحب ان هو يسأل. غير كمان ان هو يتسأل، بيحب يسأل، بيحب الناس تجاوب عليه. تمام. اي حد يقدر يبعت اللينك يبعته، وان شاء الله هيبقى فيها ساعات تعليم مستمرة من بورد الايباو. وان شاء الله على اخر المحاضرة يعني هنقول هنكتب الكلمة المفتاحية، وهنعملها ان شاء الله عشان خاطر الناس اللي بتحب تستلم الشهادة، وهنكتب الايميل. تمام. I'm just telling them. One CEU from IBAO.
Oh, perfect. My internet
Yeah,
went down for a second, it looked like, but it came back quickly. So,
yeah, we didn't notice.
okay, good.
We just tried them the email that we're gonna send on. هي كسب، لا مش بتشمل كسب من بورد الاي باو. بس لو حضرتك اي بي اي، معتمد اي بي اي، تاخد الساعة. تمام. عفو. آه، ده الايميل كتبته اللي هو الخاص، بتبعت عليه عشان تبعت عليه الرقم الاعتماد والاسم، عشان خاطر تستلم الشهادة. Okay, we can start now. It's fine. Yes, let's
Okay, perfect.
begin.
Can still see everything?
Yeah,
Awesome. Did you want to do the introduction first, or do you just want me to jump in?
I need you to just, tell me how you love to introduce yourself. I'm gonna translate.
Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about person-centered skill-based assessment practices and really thinking about how that goes across the lifespan and not just in the early years. My name is Mark Malady. I'm a board certified behavior analyst. I have been for 20 years. Uh, and I'll share a little bit more about why I'm qualified to present on this information and what that background is. So I like to break it down a little bit about how does my qualifications relate to this specific topic and what we're going to explore today. First, I have lived experience as I am autistic, and in my 17 years of uh, education before I went to college, I had a individualized education plan, and I was identified as what's called a twice exceptional learner. So I was both gifted and talented in some areas, and I was below or deficit based in other areas. So I had a lot of skill-based assessments used on me from various professionals. I never actually had a behavior analyst or early intensive behavioral intervention services, but I did have a wide variety of school-based services that I participated in as a learner. My clinical experiences that are relevant is I've been doing skill-based assessments for the last 18 years with a wide range of people from 2 to 70. And I've used over 40 different skill-based assessments across that time period. So I have a really large sample of the sorts of problems that present when using different assessments. Publication research, I have one book chapter that I published with Stu Law and Brendan Boer on utilizing evidence-based practices in adult services, where we go over our model of skill-based assessment within that space. And there is a citation reference link to that at the end, and we're excited. So if you want to read that, please do. There are a couple of free open access versions of it, so you should be able to get access to it. But if you don't, just email me and I'll be happy to share. We have 3 empirical studies that are
no, I
currently.
will. I know I will.
Okay, good, good. I could just send it along too when I send the PowerPoint to you and you can
Yeah.
include it. And then we have 3 empirical studies that are currently in process at different stages of peer review.
Mm.
One of them is submitted, and then 2 of them are hopefully going to be submitted within the next month is kind of our time frame. But we're kind of at a critical point where a lot of our data is finally done and it's through its steps and its process, and now we're just getting it out into the world. And then early on, I was a research assistant on an ABLES-R milestone project with Dr. Partington and Dr. Pritchard's on identifying if you use the ABLES with children before they were diagnosed, were you able to screen and identify and actually predict who was going to be. That was very early in my career. I just did a lot of the data analysis, a lot of video coding, and really a lot of the kind of grunt or labor-based work rather than the intellectual work on that project, as a lot of you
Yeah,
are
I
probably.
can relate.
And
Okay,
then,
great.
yeah, over on the side, that conflict of interest, I think it's always important to bring awareness to, like, what's
Yeah, I
going
love
to
it.
influence
Yes,
my
I love how
bias.
you included in your, personal
Yeah.
information. Yeah.
My current job is the creation of an assessment. I've worked for the company that I've worked for since 2012. And
Mm.
originally, I was hired as a consultant behavior analyst. And then I kind of grew inside of that company. And early on, we identified the need for a skill-based assessment that spanned across the lifespan. So we started developing that in 2013, and now we're on a very different version of it, and we've kind of altered our goals quite a lot. But my job stayed clinical that whole time. So I still run a learning center for children based on the model that we've created. But a large part of my job is the development the marketing and the sharing of that information. So I'm going to be biased naturally when I'm talking about assessment process. And then my other general biases is I have a core belief that people learn. Everyone is capable of learning. And we say that a lot, but to really put action to it makes for uncomfortable conversations. It makes for uncomfortable perspectives and makes for difficult journeys intellectually together. So I do like to bring that I am always going to approach every conversation of I fundamentally believe every human can learn. And
Yeah.
then I also fundamentally believe that professional tools can cause harm, even tools that it's hard to see what that harm is.
Mm.
The way that we speak about people, that we think about people, and that we share information about people can change the opportunities that those people have, and it can change their experience. It can change how their mom sees them and how mom gives love or doesn't give love to them. So we have a lot of weight, and I like to approach all of my projects with this general bias of if we're making a tool, we have to be realistic about what are the things that it could do that isn't ideal. And when we evaluate what tools we're using, we need to be realistic about what are the non-ideal aspects of this so that we can continue to improve our tools over time.
Thank you for this. Thank you so much. This is really inspiring. Thank you.
Yay.
I'm just gonna translate now all of this. Excuse me. Okay. هو حب النهارده يعني يحط لكم ليه هو يعني هو طبعا بيعرف نفسه زي ما قلت لكم ان هو خبرة 20 سنة في مجال تحليل السلوك التطبيقي. كمان هو عارض هنا مؤهلاته كلها زي ما انتم شايفين، ازاي هو عنده خبرة حياتية اولا بان هو عايش وفي يعني واتعلم في المدارس ما كانتش وقتها في معروفة التشخيصات وكانتش زي دلوقتي. لكن هي عملت فيعني فرق في حياته لما كان بيواجه صعوبات في المدرسة، وبعد كده هو اتشخص في توحد، وبعد كده هو تلقى خدمات ما كانش وقتها خدمات تحليل السلوك التطبيقي، بس كان في خدمات متنوعة من النظام التعليمي وقتها. كمان هو عنده خبرة عملية بإن هو في الكلينيكال اكسبيرينس. هو هنا 18 سنة بيشتغل في المهارات والتقييمات بتاعة تطوير المهارات من سن سنتين لحد ما فوق 70 سنة. كمان هو عنده كتاب واحد عمله في 2021 صدر. برضو هنا هو شارك في دراسات كتير جدا، وشارك في برضو في الايبلز ار كبرنامج تقييمي احنا عارفين لما كان بيتطور. كمان هو دلوقتي بيشتغل حاليا ان هو بيطور أدوات تقييم في شركات ومراكز. احنا عارفين إن هم هناك الشركات بيبقى نظامها إنها بتطور الأدوات الخاصة بمحللي السلوك والخاصة بالتعامل مع الأطفال. كمان الأدوات الخاصة بتدريب المتدربين والمتعلمين الجدد. هو بيقول إن هو شارك يعني عنده مثلا خبرة من 2013 بيشتغل الشغلانة دي و2012، فهو عنده بما فيه إن هو ابتدى بعد كده لما الشركة دي حاولوا إن هم يطوروا بقى الأداة التقييم، احتاجوا إن هم في الشغل لقوا إن مفيش أداة تقييم بتخدم فعلا سن على مدى حياة الإنسان، يفضل يقيم في مجموعة المهارات اللي هو محتاجها في كل فترة في حياته. ومن هنا جت أداة التقييم اللي هو هيتكلم عليها النهاردة. كمان هو بيقول مهم جدا إن الواحد يذكر هنا إن هو عنده في مجموعة اعتقادات هو بيؤمن بيها، إن أي حد يقدر يتعلم، إن الناس بتتعلم. كمان إن بعض الأدوات المهنية اللي بعض الأخصائيين بتستخدمها قد يحدث أو يسبب بدون قصد يعني أذى للطفل أو أذى للحالة. ومن هنا كان مهم جدا جدا جدا، عشان خاطر في ناس بتقولك لا مفيش حاجة بتعمل كده. لا، هو الاستخدام الغلط أو الاستخدام السيء لأداة معينة ممكن يعمل كده فعلا. تمام. فهو من هنا هو دي الحاجات اللي هي المبادئ اللي هو ماشي فيها عمليا، عشان خاطر منها نبقى عارفين هو ايه اللي بيتكلم عنه وايه المهم جدا في حياته. اوكي، جو ahead.
Awesome.
Okay.
So learning objectives for today, we're going to go over some of the general functional concerns that I think all behavior analysts should have when considering skill-based assessments. Participants will be able to identify criterion-based assessment comparisons, what's common in our industry, and some alternatives to what is common.
Mhm.
And then we're going to start to form the skill sets to really think about designing your own skill-based decision-making hierarchies for assessment of the selection of the assessments that you're currently using in your practice. So my goal is that there is a practical component of this. It's not, hey, you should use our assessment. It's how do you adapt your current assessment process to really think about some of these things in the context of what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. هنا هيتكلم على حاجة اسمها أهداف التعلم. أهداف التعلم هنا بيقولك إن بس مش مجرد إن هو الطفل يتعلم مهارة معينة أو هدف واحد خلاص. لا، هو هنا ممكن إزاي أعدل من الهدف ده على حسب قدرات وإمكانيات الحالة أو الطفل اللي معايا. تمام. فهنا الفكرة هنا إن هو لازم تبقى عارف إيه هي يعني أهداف التعلم الواحد عاوز يعرفها، عشان خاطر يقدر إزاي يخدم الحالة دي. تمام. ممكن بس المايكات يعني. أوكي، go ahead.
Awesome. So there's actually a current line of research that's starting to happen where people are asking big questions about what are we doing and how are we doing it with skill-based assessment. I
Mhm.
think part of this context is skill-based treatment relies on this idea of constructing and building skills. However, they haven't really provided a model to understand the complexity of skills across the lifespan. So people have been strapping together our current skill-based assessments and trying to put it inside of this reformulation of awareness of how we approach common things in our practice, like functional analysis and functional assessment, and where does the selection of those fair pairs and those replacement behaviors come from? So this article is a great overview that really orients to people to the basics of, hey, what is the evidence base for these common assessments that people are using in their practice, that I'm using in my practice, that I was trained on or I am being trained on, and where are we at with that general evidence base?
Definitely. هو هنا هيعرض دراسة بحثية عن إزاي أنا بقيم إيه هي مجموعة المهارات اللي هي أكثر أهمية وأكثر قوة، إن الناس الحالات اللي معاها طيف توحد و يعني اضطرابات نمائية أخرى. خلاص، إيه هي الاعتبارات كمحلل سلوك؟ لأن بيقول إن دي أكتر حاجات المتدربين أو الناس اللي هم بيحاولوا إن هم يتعلموا عشان يشتغلوا معاهم ويفيدوهم، دي أكتر الحاجات اللي هو بيبقى واقف حيران فيها. يعني هو إيه أولى، إيه هو أكتر مهارات هو محتاجها. تمام. ودي هي دي اللي الدراسة البحثية دي حاولت إن هي تلخصه زي ما أنت شايف كده. هو دي is it this year because I see it in 2025.
Yep, this
مم.
one just came out. Yep.
مهم.
And this
دي
is
دراسة
really
جديدة. مهم.
This is really a summary article of several other things that have been being published since 2020. And I don't have any affiliation with either of these authors or
Mhm.
that other research line. I've actually
Yeah.
never talked to any of them, which is good. But so the idea is that in general, our
Mm.
field is growing awareness to these issues.
Yes, yes, definitely. Thank you for this reference, actually. Someone else will go out and get something he already worked on, but not you, of course. I'm
So,
just gonna translate this, this just
yeah.
هو هنا بيتكلم، دي مقالة بحثية صدرت من مجموعة من أبحاث اتعملت من 2020 لحد النهاردة خلاص، وهي بتتكلم، بس هو هنا بيذكرها، بيقول أنا معرفش مين اللي عاملها، أنا عمري ما اتكلمت معاهم، بس هو هنا ذكرها كمرجع إن فعلا في تطور في الوعي في المجال، إن أنت بتحاول إن أنت فعلا تركز على موضوعات هي فعلا محيرة بالنسبة لكل الأخصائيين وكمان المحللين. Okay, go ahead.
So this table and the
Mhm,
next table is pulled from that article. And it's a
mhm,
nice side-by-side comparison where you can look at reliability, validity, and then that reported use in practice column.
mhm,
And it starts to kind of paint the picture a little bit of how are we using things and does it match the evidence base? So some of the interesting conclusions from this is if we look at the VB map and the ABLES R,
mhm,
which I don't think anyone would be confused about saying that those are the two most predominant assessments in this space. The actual reliability and validity stage that they're in is emerging. There's very limited research that actually demonstrates their usage. Whereas if you look at newer assessments on the market, like the peak,
mhm.
which really started in 2014 and really hit the market in 2015, that's when practitioners started getting access to it. It has a very strong evidence base. And part of why that happened is in order for new assessments to be paid for inside of the American practice system, insurers are requiring that there is a strong evidence base before they will pay for it. So new assessments that are coming out have to hit and check off some boxes that older, what I call legacy assessments, were not held to. And they were able to be kind of grandfathered in over time.
Yeah, yeah. I remember back in May, I did a webinar with Fernando Armendariz, and he already said that he is calling them the commercial
Mhm.
programs. Yeah, because I understand it back then because he already explained it and he told me, okay, this is what the insurance are comparing you because if you want me to pay for it, then I'm gonna, tell you what to use or what services. This
Yes.
is why, this is the
Now,
big issue.
there's a little nuance there that
Mm,
most insurers in the American market have a clause that as long as you have a validity and a reliability study, that they
mm,
have to pay for it. So if you don't, if you want to use a tool that does not have that, the insurer will literally say, I'm not paying for that, even though you already did all of the work. So you're not
yeah,
getting authorization beforehand. You've already done this assessment with this kid and now you're asking to get paid. And if you don't have a validity and a reliability study that you can submit back to them, they are justified in telling you, no, you can't, I will not pay for that.
yes,
So, in order to enter the market as a new assessment, if we see areas for growth in assessment practices and we want to build things that allow practitioners to do different activities, then we have to work through those funding models because that's where a
mm,
large majority of practice comes from. Inside of America, that's pretty much 82% of all services. That's what those BACB statistics show us.
yes, definitely. Okay, let me just translate that and get back to you. هنا كمان زي ما ده من الجدول ده من عدة جداول موجودين في المقالة اللي احنا اتكلمنا عليها. وهو هنا بيعرض ان كل اداه تقييميه زي ما احنا شايفين في هنا الفي بي ماب، في الايبلز ار، في مجموعه برامج تانية، وفي البيك. هو بيتكلم على كل واحده من دول دلوقتي معمول ان هي ايه المعلومات الخاصه بيها. كمان اهم حاجه هنا بيذكر ان هي آه، هل هي فعلا مثبته علميا ولا لا. لأن أهم حاجة بالنسبة لاستخدام خدمات تحليل السلوك إن أنت تكون بتشتغل ببرامج وأدوات مثبتة علميا. وهنا زي ما احنا شايفين هو بيقول إن الفي بي ماب والإيبلز آر هي أقل شوية من حاجات مثبتة أكثر علميا زي البيك مثلا. تمام. فهنا مع إن البيك بيقول إن هو من 2014 والناس ابتدت تستخدمه في 2015، لكن هو كل ده ان موجود في الخدمات في امريكا عشان خاطر الخدمات مغطاة من التأمين. هو هنا بيفرض عليك ان انت لازم تستخدم ادوات. حاضر يا محمود، حاضر. بس اشرح بس الحتة دي، ان احنا تستخدم الخدمات عشان خاطر يقدر التأمين يدفع ويغطي تكاليفها. في امريكا لازم بيلزمك لازم يكون الادوات او الخدمات اللي انت هتستخدمها جوه الجلسات هي مدفوع يعني مثبتة علميا. واذا انت مش عندك، فانا بقول له دكتور فرناندو ارمنداريز احنا استضفناه قبل كده في شهر 5، ويتكلم على ان مثلا في برامج هي تجارية اكتر عشان خاطر الموضوع دوت ان التأمين من الحكومة هي اللي بيلزمك ان انت تاخد خدمات مثلا برامج زي البيبي ماب وهكذا. فهو قال ان هو ده فعلا موجود، بس انت لو انت عندك اثبات علمي على ومعمول أبحاث على أداة تقييم معينة وفي فعلا إثباتات علمية، فده دلوقتي موجود متاح إن أنت تقدمها للحكومة وهي تجيز إن أنت تشتغل بالأداة دي. بس أهم حاجة تكون يعني موفاة للمتطلبات بتاعت إن هي تكون مستخدم يعني مثبتة علميا. تمام. Okay, I was just thinking someone here was raising his hand. I'm just gonna take مستر محمود، لو حضرتك عندك سؤال تقدر تقوله عربي أو إنجليش وأنا هترجمه يعني. مستر محمود موجود؟ Okay. Okay. I don't know where he went. Okay.
Accidental hand raise? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
So here's the second part of the table that's just continuing that. So we see
Mhm.
the EFLL has weak evidence, the ABLA. Are you all familiar and do you use the ABLA in your work?
Actually, what we have, I'm not familiar with it, but we
Okay,
must have baby map, ABOZAR, and also BEAK, and also AFLS. You already
yep,
mentioned that in the first table. Yes, and EFL, of course.
perfect. So the ABLA is actually out of the 1970s, and it was out of a Canadian research group. And then it got a footholding at UNR. And the first program I worked at, he was one of the original graduate students who was on the ABLA. So I actually was exposed to the ABLA really early, and I thought it was a normal thing, but
Mm,
not a lot of people, even stateside,
yeah,
use the ABLA, even though it has the most research evidence behind it. And it's got a lot of really great features, but it has a very small range and a very
yeah, I see it's
specific
from two to
function for use.
six. Yes, yeah.
And it doesn't even cover everything you need for 2 to 6. It's really hyper focused. If you look at that domains target skills, it's
Mm-hmm.
really hyper focused on discrimination awareness. And it gives a great orientation, organization to the types of discriminations a learner currently is capable
Mm.
of engaging in. And so before you teach something like MANS to a child, if they're not able to differentiate from two channels of information, the way that you have to approach MAND instruction is functionally different. So the ABLA is a great way if you're having trouble with learners acquiring through your standard procedures and you're seeing difficulty in establishing some of those really early skills like basic receptive identification, to identify why that's happening and come up with alternative ideas. So the ABLA is the strongest empirically validated at this point and one of the least used, which is a complicated problem.
So does this mean that it is, in some states they use it or till
In
now?
some very small practice pockets, not even
Mhm.
at like an individual state level, but
Yeah, maybe in
depending
the
on,
early intervention because it's obvious.
ideally, it would be great
Mm,
if I
mm,
could say that, hey, the majority of early intervention people in the state of Nevada use it. But even that would be a stretch. You're talking
mm,
small, small percentages of use. And part of that is because of historical infighting between big schools at that time and who
mm,
trained you and what was good behavior analysis and what was bad behavior analysis and what's the goal. And a lot of that infighting between behavior analysts led to small pockets of practice developing where one person in one pocket practices very different than another person in a different pocket. And so that current situation of very few people using the ABLA, I kind of contribute to that historical infighting between academic lineage, sadly.
yeah. So what is it short for ABLA?
The assessment of basic language abilities.
Great. اوكي. هو هنا بيتكلم على ان في برنامج كان معمول في السبعينات من كندا اسمه ABLA زي ما انتم شايفينه في اول الجدول هنا. وهو بيقول لك هنا تقييم اللغة اللي هي الأساسية للطفل. تمام. وهو هنا الفئة العمرية اللي كان معمول ليها هو من سن سنتين لست سنين. يقول لك على الرغم من ان هو البرنامج دوت كان معمول بشكل يعني اتعمل في السبعينات واشتغلوا بيه، بس هو أكثر الأدوات التقييم يعتبر هو بيقول هو يعني مثبت علميا وكل أدواته صحيحة مستوفاة الشروط، لكن هو أقل استخداما جدا. ممكن يكون عشان خاطر هو الفئة العمرية اللي هو بيشتغل بيها هي فئة صغيرة كمان، يعني من سنتين لست سنين بس هو بيتكلم على اللغة اللي هي المهارات اللي انت محتاجها أساسية عشان تقدر تبني اللغة عند الطفل. تمام. فهو هنا بيقول لك يعني في أوقات ساعات بتبقى أدوات مستوفى الشروط لكنها الأقل استخداما والأقل شيوعا عند محللي السلوك والأخصائيين. Someone wrote here that what is the EFL actually.
Perfect. The Essentials for a Living by McGreevy and colleagues. It is a assessment that really focuses on meaningful skills that are required across the lifespan. And typically it's utilized with people who are very impacted or they have relatively limited skill sets. So the diversity is really on that side of functioning where you're trying to just create general safety in the world for a person. And so it focuses in on things like can they ask for the things that are most important to them? Are they able to navigate community spaces? Do they have a way to inform people of something dangerous that's in their space? And it really boils down to those very practical skill sets. Did
Yeah,
that help?
definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Great. هو هنا جاوب على السؤال. هو حد سأل في الشات ان هو ايه هو برنامج الاي اف ال. هو طبعا احنا عارفين الاي اف ال دوت برنامج المهارات الأساسية، هو معمول بكل بساطة على مجموعة المهارات. هو بيقول إن هي اللي هي الضرورية الأساسية للأطفال والبالغين، عشان خاطر بعض الحالات اللي عندها آه، زي ما بيقولوا مش متطورين، ومحتاجين ان هم يركزوا على مهارات اللي هي الأساسية اكتر طول يعني فترة حياته. وكمان هو هنا كان أول ما اتكلم على الجدول أصلا بمقارنة بالاي بي ال اي، هو الاي اف ال اصلا هو بيقول الاي بي ال اي اقل شيوعا، لكن هو اكثر إثبات علمي، يعني أكثر أداة تقييم ليها إثبات علمي، والعكس ال EFL هنا. وهنا دي المقارنة، إن هو ممكن يكون أكثر شيوعا منه، لكن هو أقل إثباتا علميا، يعني less evidence based. تمام، وهي هنا دي الفرق بين. أوكي go ahead.
Awesome. And this general like move of using acronyms for assessments, I think is very confusing at this point. The
Sometimes.
ABLs are the EFL, the ABLA, the VB map, and then they all stand for something. So that was actually one of the reasons why we decided not to use an acronym because it gets really confusing.
No, actually, the acronyms are just, a way to synthesize
Yeah,
some of them, because I'm not gonna say, okay, use the essential for living.
I know, right?
Yeah, acronyms actually are a huge part of and the ABA culture, I see.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they use it. They use abbreviations a lot. They use acronyms a lot. They use, a lot of stuff. You
Yes.
know,
And it can
yeah.
get a little conceptually daunting, which we'll see from this article from Padella. And so she in 2020 asked the question of
Mm,
what assessments are people using out there? And this line of research really led to that Bandura and Hart article in 2025. And so Padella kind of chases this thread down through a bit of her research between
mm,
2020 and 2025. But this first survey of the field kind of, I think, paints the picture of some of the complexity that's happening.
mhm.
So this table wasn't hers. She didn't have a bar graph, but I just took the data that she reported in narrative
Yeah,
form and just made a quick little bar
yeah,
graph.
yeah. I'm a visual
Um,
person. I love it.
yeah, me too. And so like in a wall of text, it gets a little hard.
Yeah.
But what we're looking at is how many people out of, she surveyed over 1,000 people, close to about 1,500 people at various stages in their
Mm,
career. Some were currently certified, some were pursuing certification, some were
mhm,
teaching. So it's a pretty big spread of anybody who's working in the ABA space. Um, Primarily from America, I believe most of the respondents were. But the important thing about the survey methods that were used is you could answer multiple assessments. So it's not going to tie out to 100%, which is why you'll see like 77% say they use the VB map, and then you have over 40% saying the ABLES, because a lot of people use more than one assessment, right? Which is pretty common in our practice space.
yeah.
If you look all the way over to the side, 115 other assessments. So we have four major
Mm,
players on the market. And then we have 115 other things that people are
yeah.
saying, I use that too.
Mhm,
So the likelihood that you're just using one assessment for every learner that you work with is really low. Like we're not really seeing that, but we're not necessarily seeing an infrastructure of how people make decisions on which assessments to use and why they decide to use that assessment.
yeah.
Some of the other data that I put in a graph, but I didn't put in here, and I probably should have. Maybe I'll update that when I send it out for you guys.
Okay.
But from this same article, she then actually asked a follow-up question of, well, how did you learn to use the assessments?
Yeah.
And over 70% say that they're learning to use assessments in their direct clinical training. So they're
Mm.
directly clinically taught to use it by somebody through their graduate experience. And
Yeah.
only about 30% said they're going to the literature. So only 30% are exploring the literature, saying, I
Yeah.
need to learn how to use this assessment so I can serve my learners. And then they're going and trying a new thing that they weren't directly taught, which is really important to think about when we're
Hmm.
trying to figure out how do we make change into the world. And so we look at the scenario of the peak that it's got great evidence behind it. But at this time in 2020, it had already been out for 5 years at that time period. And if it's
Yeah.
already been out for 5 years, it only has 14% of the market share. So it took them 5 years to get 14% of the surveyed respondents to start using it, which kind of makes sense that 30% of people are looking at the literature. So you can think like, hey, 16% looked at that and decided it wasn't relevant to their population, or there was too many barriers to entry, or they didn't know where to get the training they needed, or they weren't able to access it, or they didn't have the clinical capacity in that moment to change their operations. Lots of reasons why you wouldn't adopt something that the literature is saying could be helpful to you. So I like to think about this in the context of everything else that we're kind of considering. And then I put these little horizontal bars up here with some general qualifiers. So only going up to the age of 5,
Mm.
limited empirical support from that table that we looked at from the 2025 article, normative development, and indistinguishability.
Mm.
Is everyone familiar with the concept of indistinguishability? Is that something in your all's practice
Mm.
spaces?
Not, not, I'm not familiar.
Okay, perfect. So indistinguishability was the original goal of the Lovaas model when he published his
Mm.
1987 article. In
Mm.
order to be considered the optimal outcome, an autistic would no longer present as autistic. That
Mhm.
is the concept of indistinguishability. You are
Indistinguishable.
indistinguishable from any other child.
Ah, ah, ah.
And the
That
goal,
mean, yeah, this is what you already told me. Normative. It's like,
yes,
having the
and
features of normal.
yes, having the features of normal and being indistinguishable.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the idea is that our tools can guide us towards promoting normalcy, or they can promote individuality. And our
Mm.
tools can guide our clinical practice. So in our current practice space over the last 10 years, there's been a lot of push for, hey, are we promoting indistinguishability and the
Mm.
idea of normal, or are we promoting quality of life and meaning? And those two concepts are kind of put side by side. So a
Yeah.
lot of autistic self-advocates say ABA promotes
Yeah,
indistinguishability at its core.
yeah,
And then modern ABA practitioners say, no, we don't do that. Like, I'm not trying to make any kid normal.
yeah.
Well, when you pop the hood a little bit and you look at the tools that you're using to justify your services,
Hmm.
they are all based on what a typical person of that age looks like. And that is indistinguishability.
Yeah.
And so we can have lip service that we don't do that. But if our actual behavior is controlled by instruments that are designed from that, then we are engaging in that practice. And I'm a person who thrives when things match logically. I don't like logical disconnects. I don't like that behavior analysts are saying we don't do that, and then our practices are showing that we do that. And autistic self-advocates, this is a pretty common thing for a certain profile of autistic, that disconnect makes us check out, withdraw, and run away. And so a lot of the hatred that ABA is getting from the autistic community does boil down to this disconnect of you're claiming you don't do that, but you do, and you've done it historically, and you say you did it historically, and it looks like you're still doing it to us, but you're not taking any accountability for it.
Yeah,
So I
I
like
can
to be
definitely
transparent.
relate to that. This contradictions actually.
Yeah, yeah, it contradicts it. I was at a conference, the California Association of Behavior Analysis, earlier this year. Oh, it was like February or so. And I was doing a presentation on learner identity and kind of how Generate allows us to talk about identity in a different way. And right before my talk was the keynote presenter, and the keynote presenter did some of the groundbreaking research on large scale outcomes of early intensive behavioral intervention data back in the 90s. And then he replicated it in the mid 2000s. And then he just did another one in 2025. But all the measures that he used were indistinguishability measures. Um, and the gold standard that he gave in his evaluation was an indistinguishability standard. And there was no way to say anything other than you're trying to make children normal. That is still what we're going for. That's what we're evaluating our success on. And that's a problem if we want to talk like we're not doing that. If we're okay with that professionally, then we should just own it and be honest and say, you know what? Yeah, we are trying to make autistic kids look normal, and that's fine. And that's what we believe in. If that's what you believe in, you should own it and you should take accountability. If it's not what you believe in, then you've got to find ways to augment tools that are designed on that concept to match your belief.
Sure.
But that was a
Okay.
lot, so I'll let you translate. I'm actually
Yeah.
going to grab a coffee if that's okay while you translate, because I feel like
Yeah.
that's a pretty long one.
Yes.
Perfect.
ثانك يو. وهنا بس الموضوع هو يعني لما بيحب يتكلم عن فكرة مستر مارك هو بيحب يعني يوضحها شوية كتير. فمعلش لو الناس حاسة ان الكلام كتير، بس انا بحاول ان انا بترجمه واختصره يعني. تمام. هو بيتكلم هنا على ان برضو في نفس الدراسة ديت. لا، هي دي مش دراسة، هو دي زي دراسة استقصائية عملتها دكتورة بتحاول إنها تشوف إيه الأكثر الأدوات شيوعا مع محللي السلوك، أو في مجال تحليل السلوك التطبيقي أكثر أدوات التقييم استخداما في 2021. فهو هنا عمل الرسم البياني دوت بيحاول إن هو يوضح النتائج اللي هم وصلوا لها، زي ما احنا شايفين هنا مقسمها على حسب أدوات التقييم. البيبي ماب واصل هنا اللي هو الأكثر شيوعا 77 تقريبا في المية. ايبلز ار أقل، والفابس دوت والبيك، وكمان البار دوت هو بيقول ده في 115 أداة تقييم تانية. فهو اختصرهم في البار ده لأن هم يعتبروا تقريبا كلهم في نفس المستوى اللي هو حوالي مثلا فوق 30%. فهو هنا بيقول إن كمان مش بس على هنا في اللي هي مكتوب بالعرض دوت بيقول لك إن هو هنا ليه هم الحاجات ديت أكثر شيوعا، بس هو بناء على إيه؟ ان هنا كمان في حدود تانية اكثر لادوات التقييم ديت، لان هي في مثلا كلهم هنا يعتبروا لسن 5 سنين. كمان في ادوات منهم لسن 5 سنين limited empirical support، ان في ادوات كتير منها خلاص محدودة. الدم بتاعها محدود. كمان هنا بيتكلم على حاجة مهمة جدا جدا جدا، وهي إن قدرة البرامج ديت على إنها تعمل حاجة لوفاس كان بيتكلم عليها في كتبه، اللي هي القدرة على إن أنت تجعل الطفل عاديا كالطفل العادي بالظبط. فهنا بالظبط هو هنا بيتكلم على إيه؟ بيتكلم على إن أنا بقول له مش كل الناس تعرف الموضوع دوت. فهو شرحه على إن هو مش كمان بس إن، لأن طبعا في جدال كبير جدا 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 بيقول لك ان دلوقتي مش لازم ان الطفل يبقى عادي. في مدافعين عن حقوق اطفال التوحد واطفال التنوع العصبي بيقول لك، وانا ليه انا المفروض ان انا اخليه عادي؟ ما هو ممكن يبقى نفسه، وفي نفس الوقت يبقى مش لازم كل الناس تبقى طبيعية، او مش لازم كل الاطفال تبقى طبيعية. فهنا في جدال كبير جدا في مع يعني محللي السلوك او الناس اللي هم بتطور البرامج وبتتكلم على التوحد وحالات التنوع العصبي بالذات وحقوقهم، ان هو في دايما مطالبات بان مش لازم الاطفال كلها تبقى عادية. ففي ناس بتتكلم بتقول احنا مش عايزين الاطفال تبقى عادية، بس عايزينه يبقى مهاراته مناسبة أو ملائمة للفئة العمرية، ودي أوقع. تمام. فهنا هو بيتكلم على ان دوت هو ده اللي اهم جدال موجود، ان لو انا بسعى ان الطفل او اداة التقييم اللي انا بعملها او اداة التقييم اللي انا بستخدمها ان هي تسعى ليه ان هو تعمل الطفل قدراته اقرب ما يكون للعادي، الطفل الطبيعي، خلاص انا بعترف بده، ابقى صادق مع نفسي. لكن لو هي مش قادرة تعمل كده وانا مش معتمد عليها، على ان هو الطفل، ان انا هدفي في الاخر ان انا اخلي الطفل دوت قدرته على ان هو يكون زي الطفل الطبيعي، يبقى هنا انا كمان لازم اكون صادق مع نفسي كأداة تقييم، وكحد بطور من أدوات التقييم عشان خاطر أشتغل معاها مع الطفل. وهنا دي اللي هو بيتكلم عليها فعلا هي دي حاجة من الحاجات اللي هي موجودة جدل صريح جدا مع خبراء ومحللي السلوك. Okay, go ahead.
Awesome. I don't know how hard of a thing that is to hear for you all, because I don't know kind of where culturally in a practice space your services are as far as that. That's a really incendiary thing to say inside of American practice spaces. It's a hard thing for behavior analysts over here to hear that and to see that and to really think about that. But I don't know if that's like okay to you guys or if you're like, whoa, I have some big feelings about that.
هو هنا just it isn't about this. There haven't been like this kind of controversial because it's semi as if it is, because some are familiar with the assessment since the mid 2000s, but it is just getting there. It just
Yeah.
doesn't have these controversials because
Okay.
people are just trying to get familiar with it, get results with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't really get to the controversials.
Okay, perfect. That's great. I was just going to
Yeah.
stop and explore that together if we need to, but if we don't, then that's great for me. So I
Okay.
appreciate that check-in.
Yeah. هو هنا بيسأل على إن يعني في حاجات من دي هي عندهم في أمريكا عندهم منها جدال على مواضيع كتير. فأنا بقول له هو الموضوع هنا عندنا بيختلف في الوطن العربي، لأن هو مش عندنا الموضوعات ديت كخلافات قد ما هي لسه الناس بتاخد وعي، بتتعرف لسه على بعض أدوات التقييم. مش كلها عندنا، في بعض المواضيع لسه ما اتفتحتش عندنا، فمش عندنا اللي هو الجدل. هو بس بيقول ان هو فعلا بس كان محتاج يعرف اذا كان هي دي نفس القضايا اللي موجودة عندهم ولا لا. اوكي جو ahead.
Awesome. So we created Generate and we started building it like we had talked about back in 2013, 2014, and we had a
Mm,
few versions of it, but really it was around 2019, 2020 that we really landed on this version that we're at. And the reason why is, like I had said, I was hired as a consultant for our organization. And at that time, we worked with over 200 people who were 18 and over up to end of life across 7 different
mm,
service types. So this was employment, people building things and manufacturing, This was people's living arrangements where they lived in semi-institutional settings, or they lived in full community settings. They lived in apartments by themselves, or they had jobs in the community working at a coffee shop and doing things. And I was hired as a contract behavior analyst to work in specific situations with people who were having a really hard time. And I was working with one man who he had lived in state institutions for 50 years, and then he was transitioned to the community. And they were seeing a lot of institutional behaviors that they hadn't seen in many, many years come back. And they weren't really sure why. Well, when I was doing the records review, because he lived in an institution in our state, there was a rule that every 10 years you had to have a psychological assessment. Everybody who was in a state institution, every 10 years had to have a psychological assessment. So I was like, great, I can get a baseline of this guy because I have 5 psychological assessments. Well, every psychological assessment used different tools and were written from a different place. And I couldn't even answer a simple question of, could this guy ever tell the time on a clock? Could he ever order his own food?
Because
Could he ever share his
there
emotions?
were no documentation, right?
They
This
had
was
documentation, but they changed the instrument
ah,
every time, and they reported on the outcomes of the instrument, but I couldn't get a running record of his skills over those 50 years, even though they did it. But
mm,
because they changed what they used every single time, I
yeah,
wasn't able to create a picture of him.
yeah,
So that was one scenario. Another
mm,
scenario was in our work programs where we were teaching people to manufacture and assemble. I couldn't get basic answers to why does this guy get to try this job? And why does this lady get put on this job? There was no framework to their skills, their abilities, their interests, their context. There was no way for people to drill that down. There were some really good staff that learned to come from that place, but they didn't have the language or the abilities to be able to advocate from that consistent place. So it was clear that we didn't have a good understanding of needs of human beings across multiple service offerings that we were doing. And so, of course, we looked at everything on the market, and there was nothing that was even close to meeting our needs across all of those spaces. And really, the questions that we were playing with in those early days was, is it possible to have something that is relevant for all people across all contexts and all settings? Or do you have to have tailored individual uses like the ABLA, like we talked about? Most data that's out there, really, really good, but it's very narrow use. It's only about these discrimination skills. And it looked like in our offerings of assessment tools that the wider you go, the less precision you get. So as you look at an instrument that is designed across the lifespan, there's less precision. And our question was, is that a natural part of this problem that we're trying to think about? Or is that a byproduct of our approach to this as a profession to this point in time?
right. Let me just get quick translation كده. هو هنا بقى هيبتدي يتكلم على أداة التقييم اللي هو طورها النهارده اسمها generate، اللي هو يعتبر ترجمتها باللغة العربية توليد. يعني اللي هو لما يكون في بنولد أو بنطور مجموعة مهارات. وهنا بيقول إن لما هو يعني اشتغل في الشركة من 2012 اللي هي كانت معنية بتطوير المهارات وتطوير الأدوات اللي بيستخدموها للتقييمات، ومجموعة تقييمات كانوا بيعملوها هم، كان اتأثر بحالتين بالظبط. اتعرض ليهم وكان مطلوب منه إن هو يعمل لهم تقييم لحالة كان 50 سنة، وكان هو عايش في مؤسسات اللي هي رعاية الحالات الخاصة، طول عمره لحد ما وصل 50 سنة، وطبعا طلع للمجتمع إن هو يشتغل ويبقى عنده سكن ويبقى مستقل بذاته. فهو عشان كان لازم إن هو هما قانون وقتها بيقول له إن كل ما حد المفروض إن هو كل 10 سنين بيتعمل له إلزامي تقييم، عشان خاطر يعرف مجموعة المهارات اللي عنده. في كل 10 سنين لازم إلزامي إن يبقى في تقييم. فهو لا، عشان خاطر ياخد الخط القاعدي بتاع اللي عنده، رجع يعني المفروض ان هو عنده 50 سنة، يعني عنده 5 تقييمات منفصلة اتعملت كل 10 سنين في حياته. فلقى ان مجموعة ال الادوات اللي مستخدمة كل 10 سنين عشان يعمل ال5 تقييمات دول، هو مختلفة جدا جدا جدا. طبعا مختلفة، فالداتا اللي هي بتديها أو مجموعة البيانات مختلفة جدا جدا جدا. وده مش حاجة يعني تقدر إن أنت تعمل عليها خط قاعدي فعلا مظبوط، وتعرف تشتغل عليها. فهنا كان الفكرة بقى اللي هي إن هو يعمل أداة التقييم ديت. وهنا جاء الموضوع بتاع إن إزاي الواحد يعمل أداة تقييم تكون محددة قوي قوي، وفي نفس الوقت الفئة العمرية بتاعتها واسعة جدا. ولأن أغلب التقييمات زي ما احنا شفنا مثلا التقييم اللي هو اتذكر وبتاع ال ABLA اللي هو بتاع المهارات اللغوية الأساسية دي، كانت الفئة العمرية بتاعتها ضيقة وصغيرة قوي، من 2 ل6 سنين، وبتتكلم بس على المهارات اللي هي تعتبر بنقول عليها مثلا ما قبل اللغة. خلاص. فده خلاه أقل استخداما، لأن هو فعلا هو الفئة العمرية، بس هو ده مش هنقدر نعتمد عليه إن هو يبقى موجود كل مراحل حياته ونقدر نستخدم التقييم ده. فهو هنا جت الفكرة بقى بتاعت إن هو إزاي يطور أداة تقييم تخدم الحاجتين ديت مع بعض، وفي نفس الوقت أقدر أعتمد عليها في التقييمات اللي مطلوبة طول حياة الإنسان. أوكي، جو أهيد.
Awesome. This is my youngest daughter, Golden. In this
Okay.
picture, she's about 18 months, and now she's about 3. Um, and when she was born, she had 9 cord wraps, 3 around her neck, and
Mm.
she had a very traumatic entry into the world. And she
Mm.
went into the NICU, and she was into the NICU for a month, and we went through a journey. And through that whole time, their main concern while we were waiting on getting some brain scans and brain imaging was cerebral palsy and what that was going to be. And basically, every conversation with the doctor was how awful our lives of parents were about to be because we were going to have a child with cerebral palsy. I'm not exaggerating in that. There was no understanding that I've worked with over 200 learners with cerebral palsy, that I'm very intimate with that I have a cousin who has Angelman syndrome, which they thought was originally cerebral palsy, that I'm autistic. There was no changing the conversation based on just my lived experience. So I feel pretty reasonable that that's an accurate experience, that parents who are having a child who have a traumatic birth experience, their messaging is hard, hard, hard. Life will be hard. And there's truth to that, but there's also beauty in the diversity of what that experience brings. So Goldie ended up getting discharged. Her brain scans all actually read clean, and she did not get a cerebral palsy diagnosis, but she did have delays in her developmental milestones for those first 6 months. And we had a home-based team that came in and did some brief assessments and helped identify options for services. I don't like people in my house. It's my sacred space.
We are now.
It is my place to separate and feel comfortable from complex social situations that can be hard for me. And so that was a challenging moment,
Mm.
but we ended up kind of navigating with them. Hey, let us see what we can get her caught up on over this 2 months, and then let's reassess in 2 months before we really go hard in home-based services. And we got her caught up, and we ended up not needing to explore that. But obviously, my love for understanding people and my love for understanding skills as they develop across the time span leads me in scenarios like this to think about, well, if I had another assessment done on her, what are the types of things that I need to know? And so this is my oldest daughter story. She's 10. And this was about when she was 7. And this is the first time she saved her own money and went and bought a popsicle and a soda on a trip and handled the whole sales process by herself. So
Okay.
there's these little punctuated events throughout the lives of somebody that are
Mm,
really important, like being able
mm,
to buy something and engage in
mm.
purchasing independently that we
Uh,
don't think about as a giant milestone. We don't give the same weight to that as going to college and graduating or getting married or having your first child.
mm.
But it is a really big deal. And it is a really big deal that is hard to talk about. And we don't have great words to talk about that. So this is going to play out a little bit more. So maybe I'll let you translate here to kind of bring everybody up to speed so they're not just staring at pictures of kids without knowing why.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. هو هنا بيتكلم على الصورة الأولانية دي على الشمال، دي بنته الصغيرة، وهي حصل لها تعقيدات بس أثناء الولادة كان الحبل السري ملفوف عليها 3 مرات. وده أدى إن هي تدخل الحضانة والعناية المركزة، لأن هم خافوا وقتها طبعا إن يكون مثلا حصل لها مضاعفات، واتحطت تحت الملاحظة، واتعمل لها أشعاعات كتير وفحوصات كتير جدا وتحليلات كتير جدا وقت كبير. والمفروض إن هي بعد كده الحمد لله بيقول يعني إن وقتها ده كان الحديث دايما مع الدكاترة، أو كلام بيحط نفسه يعني كمثال إن على كلام أو وقتها المخاوف اللي بتبقى عند ولي الأمر أو الأهل لما يكونوا حاسين إن طفلهم عنده مشكلة، أو مثلا هيتعرض لمشكلة طول حياته، إن هي يكون عنده اضطراب أو إعاقة من أي نوع. فده هو إن هو الناس بتبص عليه، هو طبعا حقهم طبعا، بس هو بيقول أنا كولي يعني كأهل كوالد وتعرضت لدوت، وانا اوريدي كنت بشتغل مع اكتر من 200 متعلم طول حياتي العملية، كحد كمان متشخص توحد. فعندي كل الخبرة دي، ومع ذلك كنت برضو عندي نفس المخاوف اللي موجودة عند أي ولي أمر اللي هو متعرض لهذه الحالة، إن هو يبقى طفل وعنده مشكلة تلازمه طول حياته، أو عنده إعاقة تلازمه طول حياته. ومن هنا هو بيتكلم على إن هو في الآخر الحمد لله هي عملوا لها فحوصات، وهي ما تعرضتش، لان كان الاطباء ساعتها متخوفين ان هي توصل ل اللي هو المرض اللي هو الحالات بتاعه اللي هي الشلل الدماغي، لكن هو ما حصلش كده. بس طبعا كان عندها شوية تأخر في حاجات كتير، لكن هم طبعا أخدوا أول 6 شهور تدخلوا وعملوا تدخل مبكر، وكانوا موجود معاها فريق كامل في البيت، وقدروا إن هم يعني يتابعوها باستمرار. لكن هو مثلا كان بيعاني من الموضوع ده، لأن هو مثلا كانوا موجودين في البيت على طول، فكان طبعا بالنسبة له دي مشكلة، لأن هو شخص متعود على إن البيت هو المكان اللي بيقعد فيه وبينعزل فيه عن مشاكل الشغل وضغوطات الحياة وهكذا. فكان بالنسبة له، فهو بيقول إن دوت دي الصورة التانية بنته الكبيرة، وهنا هي دلوقتي عندها 10 سنين، بس دي الصورة دي وهي عندها 7 سنين، وهي هنا عملت إن هي قدرت إن هي تعمل تحوش وتروح تشتري من فلوس اللي حوشتها، المصروف اللي حوشته، إنها تروح تشتري آيس كريم، وعملت ده كله بنفسها باستقلالية. وعشان كده الصورة بتفكره بإن هي هنا ممكن الواحد يعني يمر بمجموعة مهارات وتبقى متزامنة كده مع بعض، وفي الآخر بتعمل بيحقق بيها إنجاز في حياته. فهنا دي كلها هي هنا مجموعة التعلم عبارة عن مجموعة مهارات متزامنة يعني ماشية في تزامن واحد، عشان خاطر بتتعلم فيها في الآخر مهارة كبرى أو بتعمل بيها إنجاز بتحققه في حياتك. سواء بقى كان إن أنت تخلص الجامعة بتاعتك، إن أنت تتجوز، إن أنت تخلف أول طفل، وهكذا. هي دي مجموعة الأحداث اللي هي مترابطة في حياتك اللي بتوصلك لإنجازاتك. أوكي go ahead.
Awesome. And not even related to the goal of buying something is the goal of, will you ever have a friend, a true
Mm.
friend that you can go on the journey with in life
I'm
and
still
have
working on
hard
that.
moments and fights and love. And it's separate. There's some things that together in between the space of the two arrows can help you in both of those situations, right? Being able to identify things in your environment, being able to talk
Mm.
about things, being able to share things, being able to persist. Those are shared skills. But there are different skills that need to be leveraged to be able to achieve both of those outcomes. And then maybe later on, even some of the things that we don't always think about as good, but to me, the things that are challenging in life are some of the most important parts of life. Having your heart broken for the first time as a teenager, more related probably to building a close friendship than it is to being able to buy something, but related still the same. So in these moments, I'm asking, if I look at something like, hey, she's 2 months behind her month 4 milestones of being able to close her hand, how does that play out with her being able to have her heart broken when she's 20? And
Definitely.
I don't think we have a great way to answer that right now.
Yeah.
Another one is, to me, being able to have meaningful social experiences and being able to secure your needs in life are like the two things that I want to give to my kids. I don't care what else my kids decide to do, who they decide to be, any of
Mm.
that doesn't really matter to me, but will they have a safe place to live? And will
Mm.
they not be food insecure? And will they be able to provide for their basic needs? And will they be able to grow with other human beings? Those
Yeah.
personally, as a father, are the
Mm.
two things that I care the most about.
Yeah.
And
It's
so,
it's most of like an independence set of skills.
yeah, this idea of independence, though, so we can go down a little side journey because I got a little rant on this, but we won't go too far in that.
No, this
Sometimes,
is what it does, we call it independency, but
yeah. And independence is used so broadly sometimes
yeah, I know.
that the emotional experience gets
Mm.
taken out of that term independence. So, like, if I say I'm trying to help your kid be independent, it's independent for what? Because I know lots of people who have a house who are good in their career, but they're fully dependent on their partner. They're very dependent on the financial resources of their family. And their level of dependence, when you really break it down, is very high. They can do a lot
I
of
know.
complex things.
None of the less we never talk about, emotion independency.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if we move too far away from the meaningful outcomes and we get too broad of terms, sometimes we as behavior analysts can come off as cold and
Mm.
disconnected when really we're trying to say the same thing. And how independence has been used in the service sectors in American human services has become this. Independence is a term that parents hear thousands and thousands of times throughout their journey, to where it becomes so meaningless to them that when you try to then use that as a motivator, there's disconnect and you're not getting the things that you need out of that moment because your language has been diffused through
Mhm.
that lived experience of the journey as the parent advocate.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let me just, translate
Yeah,
that
perfect.
and make me wonder how to answer that. اوكي. هنا كمان بيتكلم على ان مجموعة زي ما قلنا مجموعة المهارات اللي بتتبني عند الطفل عشان تحقق في الاخر انجاز. يعني مثلا الصورة الاولانية هي مجموعة المهارات اللي لازم تكون عندك عشان تقدر ان انت تكسب صديق، او ان انت تتعرف على صديق، او ان انت يبقى عندك حد صديق. دي كلها مجموعة مهارات، ان مثلا زي ان انت قادر ان انت مثلا تميز الاشياء وتعرف تتكلم عليها كويس، تلاقي مواضيع تقدر تفتحها مع حد عشان خاطر تتعرف عليه ويبقى بينكم اشياء مشتركة، كمان ان انتوا تشاركوا بعض في نشاطات مختلفة زي ما احنا شايفين هنا في الصورة، بيحاولوا ان هم يزرعوا او نشاط، اي نشاط. تمام. كمان هنا المهم بالنسبة هو بيذكر ان المهم بالنسبة له على الصورة اللي هي بتاعت البنت اللي قاعدة على الشط حزينة، هو بيتكلم على ان كأب أكثر من كونه أخصائي أو كونه محلل سلوك، إن هو هل فعلا أطفالك عندهم القدرة على إن هم يجتازوا بعض المصاعب اللي هتواجههم في حياتهم، زي مثلا الصعوبات مثلا اللي بتخليه يحزن على حالة بيعيشها، على مثلا إن هو قلبه اتكسر، إن هو زعل، إن هو حصلت له خبرة سيئة في حياته. دي أكثر المهارات اللي كولي أمر بيهمه أكتر على ابنه، مش هي دي. فهو بيتكلم كمان على إن أكثر المخاوف اللي عنده كولي أمر إن هو آه، هل أطفاله قادرين على إن هم يعيشوا في مكان آمن، كمان إن هم يعيشوا في قادرين إن هم يوفروا لنفسهم احتياجاتهم، يعيشوا في مستوى كويس. دي أكتر الحاجات المخاوف اللي موجودة عند كل أولياء الأمور. بس هنا هو بيتكلم على ان انا بقول له ده مجموعة مهارات اللي احنا بنتكلم عليها، مجموعة المهارات اللي هي بنقول عليها مهارات الاستقلالية. وبيقول ان مصطلح الاستقلالية نفسه هو مصطلح كبير قوي قوي قوي، تحت منه حاجات كتير جدا جدا جدا. مش كل الاستقلالية، في ناس بتبقى مستقلة فعلا قدام الناس، لكن هي ممكن تلاقيه هو فاتح بيت وقادر ان هو يصرف على بيته ويربي ولاده، لكن هو معتمد مثلا على الشريك في حياته، مثلا مراته مثلا، معتمد عليها هي. هو اللي فاتح البيت، وهما الاثنين متجوزين، هما الاثنين المفروض ان هما بيربوا الولاد، بس بص تلاقي هي مثلا اللي بتربي، هي اللي بتوصل الولاد، هي اللي بتعمل كل حاجة في البيت، هي اللي قايمة أصلا على فتح البيت أكتر من هي اللي محافظة على البيت. فمن هنا مش كل مش كل المصطلح بتاع الاستقلالية هو واحد. كمان ان مثلا ممكن في ناس مثلا بتبقى قادرة انها تشتغل، لكن هي في نفس الوقت مش محافظة على ان هي تطور نفسها، مش موجود. فدي مصطلح الاستقلالية ده عام جدا جدا، وبيحد مش بيوصف فعلا ممكن من كتر ما الناس بتستخدمه ويقول لك انا هدرب ابنك على ان هو يبقى مستقل، انا هدرب ابنك على ان هو يبقى مستقل. مش كل الاستقلالية واحد بالنسبة لكل فرد والتاني. اوكي go ahead.
Awesome. Okay. So all of this leads us to what should an assessment be able to do? What are the minimum things that we're hoping for out of a skill-based assessment?
Mhm.
The first one is we obviously want an accurate account of a learner's skill set. So we will need to have confidence that the information that we identify and that we record is relatively realistic information and that it matches what's happening. Pretty easy one. The next one is empower learners to live a meaningful life. And that gets way complicated.
Yeah,
There's a lot of baggage in the word meaningful.
yeah,
And how we unpack that baggage and how we ensure that that baggage is transparent and aware to people who are interpreting it is a very complicated question.
definitely.
Identify potential areas of growth. So we want to see assessment as a way forward, not as a check of they can't do it, and not as a restrictive element, which historically in America,
Mm.
assessment it defaults into can do versus can't do. So in a lot of service systems, an assessment is really about identifying if something is right for somebody versus not. And that is not about potential areas of growth. That is about restriction. So we are competing across the history of usage that is very different than the words that we have for what we hope an assessment should do.
Mhm.
And then we have a highlight strengths. So really
Mhm.
capturing the thing that makes an individual an individual. Again, strengths is a concept that is complicated. And
So
just like that.
which one is simple? Because I see them all complicated.
I think the accurate account of learner skills is simple-ish, kind of.
Yeah, yeah. Because it's
But
mostly baseline of someone else has been doing the job.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yes.
But that idea of strengths, much like independence, is because it becomes so normalized that, oh, we always got to talk about strengths. We always got to talk about strengths. We need
Yeah.
to be sure that we're maintaining the integrity of the idea of strengths.
Mm.
So strengths isn't just something you scored high on. To
Mhm.
us, strengths is something you scored high on, and it can be leveraged to fulfill your vision
Yeah. Yeah.
of your life.
Yeah, it's a like a mean to get to the
Yeah,
ultimate
you can
goal.
you can
Yeah.
rely on that to get
Yeah.
the other things you want, right? So, for example, one of my strengths is I can be really mean and I can make people stop talking, and I have a sharp tongue when I want to have one. And the want to have one it took a lot of work to get there because it used to be it was just I couldn't choose to have a sharp tongue or not.
Yeah.
And although at times in my life that has been a barrier to relationship building, at other times that has been one of my greatest strengths is that I can stop people from going down hurtful or harmful ways. And when we look at something like, hey, Mark's vision is that behavior analysts are incorporating the person's vision into their services for them.
Mhm.
And my tongue can be a strength in that scenario. Now, if we look at, hey, Mark's vision is financial security, and I have a hard time with like medical appointments and being doing like standard things a lot of people do. Those are just hard for me because there's so much weird social stuff that at times my sharp tongue can get me in trouble and it can get me to burn out from a provider or lose a provider. So at times that same topography can function as both strength and
Yeah.
weakness.
Mm.
And
Because
and that's a hard thing to
yeah,
talk
it's
about.
a tool that works in two ways. It depends on how you use it.
Yes, and that's exactly what we're talking about is that a strength is not just the topography, it's
Mm.
topography and context
Yeah.
to function aligned with vision of values. That is a strength.
Mm.
But we have a very topographical account of strengths right now, to where we're talking about strengths as things you scored high on your assessment process. And
Mm.
that starts to give the wrong impression to people. It starts to give the wrong impression. Like, there's what, 10, 11 of us in this meeting right now?
Yeah.
We all probably can pay our bills, right? Like I'm guessing everybody here, we can figure out how to get our bills paid and we're not in
Mm.
debt collection and we can sustain in society. That's probably true for
Hopefully.
all.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah. It's probably true of all of us, you know? Probably. I'll bet that it is for people who are taking time out of their weekend to come and learn something professionally. Like that's probably true.
Mm.
If it's true for all of us, is that necessarily a strength? Now, if we're talking, we have to pick one of us to be responsible for managing the books financially for a new organization we're going to open. We can't
Mm.
talk about that little tiny entry point as a strength because it doesn't differentiate our abilities. We're all the same. So if you're saying that a child has a strength and you're talking about the child being able to go to school, and you are saying that that strength is something that every other kid who goes to that school can do and has to do to be there, that's not a strength. That's a minimum requirement to entry. That's really different. Does
That
that
doesn't
kind of make
understand.
sense?
Yeah, 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 actually. But
Yeah.
I'm trying. I'm here liking it, but I'm having a hard time saying. I'm gonna translate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will try definitely. Okay.
Yeah.
هو هنا بيتكلم على ايه المفروض يحتويه اي أداة تقييم تعمل ايه. لان اهم حاجة بالنسبة له من الشمال لليمين ان يكون فعلا بتنتج مجموعة بيانات ومعلومات صحيح مش صحيحة دقيقة، عشان خاطر لمهارات حقيقية اللي موجودة عند المتعلم. طيب، ايه كمان اللي بيقول لك ان هو ان فعلا تكون الاداة التقييم دي تعطي فعلا empowerment، تعطي تمكين للمتعلم ان هو يقدر يعيش حياة، وهنا ذات معنى او ذات مغزى، او احنا بنقول عليها يعني حياة فعلا آه، آه، مفيدة ليه ولنفسه والناس اللي حواليه. كمان ان هو يقدر ان هو يتعرف على آه، مجالات آه، يقدر يطورها في نفسه. كمان ان هنا اهم حاجة ان نقدر نحط ايدينا على نقاط القوة فعلا الموجودة عند الطفل. وهنا هو بيتكلم على جدل واسع قوي بالنسبة لموضوع نقاط القوة عند الطفل، لان نقاط القوة عند الطفل مش موجودة. ممكن تكون موجودة عند أطفال أو حالات، ومش موجودة عند حالات تانية. ممكن تكون موجودة عند إنسان ومش موجودة عند إنسان. فهي نقاط القوة مين اللي يقدر يحدد ده إذا كان نقاط قوة ولا لا؟ يعني هو ممكن مثلا، هو بيتكلم على نفسه كمثال، هو بيقول إن هو يقدر إن هو عنده قدرة أو نقطة قوة عنده، هو بيشوفها إن هي نقطة قوة عنده، ان هو يقدر يعني بلسانه ان هو يعني يتكلم كلام فيسكت اللي حواليه لو مضايقين. لكن في نفس الوقت نفس نقطة القوة دي اللي هو شايفها هي ممكن تسبب له مشاكل مثلا مع العملاء، أو مشاكل مثلا مع الزملاء. لأن انت لو انت قادر ان انت تستخدم لسانك عشان تسكت الناس، فانت لو مضايقينك بس في نفس الوقت ممكن بنفس الكلام تضايق حد، أو حد يتضايق منك، أو حد يزعل منك لمجرد ان انت بتحاول تحمي نفسك، أو بتحاول تبعد الأذى عن نفسك لو انت حاسس ان انت حد مسبب لك أذى نفسي أو أي حاجة تانية. فهي هنا الفكرة بتاعت إن هو دايما لو الطفل مثلا عنده إن هو يقول لك إن نقطة القوة بتاعته إن هو قادر يروح المدرسة، هو دلوقتي مستعد إن هو عنده الأدوات اللازمة إن هو يقدر يروح المدرسة. بس هو بيقول لك ده مش نقطة قوة. هو هنا أنت بتحاول إن أنت تقول دي مظلة عامة. هو ممكن يكون ده بس هو قادر إن هو يروح، بس مش معنى كده إن دي نقطة قوة بالنسبة له. تمام. فهي هنا الفكرة بتاعت ان دايما المصطلحات بتبقى عامة قوي، لكن هي غير شاملة الفروق حقيقية الفردية بين كل حالة والتانية. اوكي، جو ahead.
Awesome. So, from what we identified that an assessment should be able to do, we then created some driving design features. And the reason why I'm giving the example of Generate is to kind of show how it can be done differently. And then we're going to walk through later um, how you can take your current assessment practices and get some of these through that. But I wanted to give a little bit of an example of what we're talking about and what that difference feels like and kind of looks like. So one thing that we were very clear we needed was high ceilings across a large range of skill sets. Because we did not design an assessment for autistic children between the ages of 3 and 18. We designed an assessment for all human beings who's ever lived and ever will live. Call it a womb to tomb assessment, which means that it should be able to show the difference between me and the difference between you and the difference between your best friend and the difference between your child. And it should be able to show each of us in our unique ways that we are as people, which is really different than thinking about something like the VB map. So on the VB map, I would look probably identical to all of you with one thing that we speak a different language, and that would just be written in there as text. But on the actual graphical display, we're going to look almost the same. To where we remove each other's names, you wouldn't be able to match who is who because it wouldn't matter because we're not differentiated by that tool. So if that's the case, then we need a range of skill sets to go so high and so far that it is impossible to get 100% on. So That's a really different feature from what's out there right now. The next one is all people are unique. Every person is a master of something, and we should be able to demonstrate that through the graphical analyses, and we should be able to capture that uniqueness across all people and big ranges of people. Relative
Okay.
evaluation, uh, there shouldn't be a checkbox on what makes you a good person and a bad person. There's features and context that aids to that. And it depends on what your vision and what your values are as an individual human being. And so we need a way to be able to evaluate the information in the context of the things that are important to you. Evolving collaboration. We haven't really talked about this one up to this point, but on that graph that we showed of the four big assessments on the market, I had a little horizontal bar that said legacy assessment. And what I call legacy assessment is assessment that's been used by behavior analysts for 10 years or more and has
Mhm.
not been changed.
Hasn't
So
been
it
changed or hasn't been
hasn't been,
evolving.
yeah. The items in it have not changed or grown as a function of 10 years or more of use.
Yeah.
So think about if 77% of behavior analysts are reporting that they use the VB map, okay?
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
average caseload in America of a behavior analyst is 10 to 15 kids at any point in time. So realistically, the average behavior analyst works with between 20 and 30 kids per year. So you just take 77%, right, of 77,000. We'll just use the most conservative number of the BACB's number. That doesn't include people who are IBAs or any of that. And we're talking about 40,000 times 20, right, is being done every year.
Mhm.
And we haven't learned anything new about what we need to change on that instrument from that. That's crazy. To me, that's like the craziest thing in the world. Like, how can you use something that many times and we haven't learned that there's a different way to do that, or there's another skill that we've been missing, or there's something to add? I think any practicing clinician has developed workarounds for things that the VMAP doesn't give them, and they're figuring out how to add that themselves. But we're not consolidating that information and changing the instrument to match our need as clinicians. So to us, evolving collaboration is this idea of we took a stab at what's relevant to all humans ever. We are not right. We're never going to be right. Like we will miss things, but we need a process and a mechanism to update that instrument as we learn more information, and that should be built into any modern assessment that we're doing. This historical, empirically validate it, and then don't ever touch it again because you'll have to empirically validate it again, is a problem for continued growth and understanding of human beings. And it's a logistical practice and science-based problem that we can solve, but we have to think about it and we have to come up with better ways to think about what that task is and how we do that task. So I'll let you stop there for you to translate.
Give me something to actually think about while translating. Okay. Thank you so much. Actually, I'm learning so
I'm going
much.
to make another coffee, so take your time and translate it out. And
Great.
if there's like questions that they have and you have, and I'm not back, like feel free to engage because that
Yeah.
was a lot.
هنا بيتكلم على اللي هي بقى الخصائص اللي موجودة في أداة التقييم المفروض تبقى موجودة في أداة التقييم. فهو هنا بيقول إن يكون في سقف توقعات للمهارات الكبرى. يعني مش لازم يكون مثلا إن كل الحالات أو كل الأطفال اللي مصمم لها أداة التقييم إنها توصل فعلا لكل المهارات. ده هنا أنا بعمل هنا سقف توقعات حقيقي وواقعي وعملي أكثر. لان انا بس احط مجموعه مهارات كبيره جدا 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 يكون ان هو لازم يوصل للمرحله دي في المهاره او ان هو يوصل للمرحله دي. ده بيكون في اداه التقييم بيكون عام قوي وغير شامل بعض الفروق اللي احنا اتكلمنا عليها اللي موجودة ما بين كل فرد والتاني، موجود بين كل حلقة والتانية. فهنا لازم سقف التوقعات بتاع المهارة ما يكونش عالي جدا، ممكن يبقى يحبط المتعلم أو يحبط الأخصائي ويحبط محلل السلوك وهو بيشتغل مع الطفل. كمان إن مش يعني كل بني آدم هو متفرد بحالته ومتفرد بخصائصه. فهنا آه، كل بني آدم في حاجة بيكون متفوق فيها أكتر، بيكون فعلا أشطر فيها. وهنا الفكرة بإن أنا لما بستغل نقاط القوة علشان أقوي بقية المهارات اللي عندي. هنا كمان مجموعة التقييمات، خلاص، اللي هي مرتبطة بتقييم المهارة دوت. بيقول لك مجموعة المهارات هنا لازم تتقيم، أو مش تتقيم، هي تتقارن بالهدف أو أهداف الإنسان، ويعني كل شخص لوحده وأهدافه وقيمه كمان. يعني مثلا هتلاقي مثلا أنا محتاج مثلا إن أنا أتعلم أسباني. طب ايه هي مجموعة المهارات اللي لازم تبقى عندي مثلا عشان اتعلم الاسباني؟ فبحاول ان انا احط مجموعة نقاط القوة اللي عندي. انا عندي مثلا نقاط القوة عندي ان انا بقدر اسمع كويس، فبالتالي احط خطة بتاعتي ان انا اتعلم اسباني على بناء على نقطة القوة اللي عندي. ومن هنا هي مفيش واحد زي التاني. تمام. كمان كمان هي هنا أكتر حاجة هو بيتكلم عليها إن التعاون المستمر مع المتخصصين في المجال عشان خاطر يطوروا أداء. وهنا كان بيتكلم في الجراف اللي هو السابق اللي احنا اتكلمنا عليه على الأربع أكثر أدوات التقييم شيوعا واستخداما. هي هنا بيقول ان دول كلهم ما عندهمش اصلا، يعني ايه اصلا ان الواحد يبقى شغال بيهم باكثر من 10 سنين بس ما فيهمش اي تطور الى الان. هو ممكن يكون كل مثلا محلل سلوك او كل مشرف هو قادر ان هو يشتغل بيها وبيقدر ان هو يطور ادوات تساعده على ان هو يشتغل بيها، بس هم مش متعاونين مع بعض كفاية. احنا ما بنتعاونش مع بعض كفاية كخبراء وكمتخصصين عشان خاطر نقدر فعلا ان احنا نطور أداة تقييم موجودة وبنستخدمها بشكل واسع. فهنا دي هي الفكرة بتاعت ان هو عايز يقولك ان دايما دايما ده المفروض يبقى فيه تعاون مشترك ومستمر لتحديث وتطوير هذه الأدوات. دي اللي المفروض تكون أصلا موجودة عند أي أداة تقييم، إن هو قادر يتطور ويستحدث ب... لكل الظروف وكل اللي هي العصور اللي من 10 سنين دلوقتي، هل هو ينفع لدلوقتي؟ واللي بعد 10 سنين هل هينفع لدلوقتي؟ وهكذا. يعني هي الفكرة في كده، إن هو القدرة على تحديث وتطوير أدوات التقييم بحيث تواكب كل زمن. Okay, go ahead.
Awesome. So from those design features, we then created some accountability steps that we wanted to make sure that we held true to. So the first one is we are abandoning the idea of cold probes in the service that
Mhm.
teaching is a good thing. And the idea in modern assessment that if you accidentally teach something, you're not going to get accurate results, to us is a byproduct of poor measurement. Which means that we shouldn't be telling people not to teach something if they can. Instead, we should ensure that the instrument can handle when we acquire a new skill set through its measurement mechanism.
Mhm.
So a kid may have never manded for anything before. In my first experience with them, I'm running my assessment and I see and I know that this kid is having a lot of problems in his life with his family because he can't ask for the things that he wants. And I could walk into that thinking my job is to demonstrate and document that he can't ask for stuff, which I already know. The parents already know. Everybody in this kid's life already knows. That's not new information to anyone. Or I can see my job as, can I teach this kid to ask for something in the next 45 minutes? And those are very different things on what you're walking into. If you're walking into your first experience with a child, is to demonstrate that they can't do the things that everybody already knows they can't do. How is the child going to feel about you as a person? Even if they don't have words and they can't engage in complex language to process through, this person doesn't believe in me. What they will experience is you're just like everybody else, right? That's not effective pairing. It's not effective instructional design processes. And your first experience with the child is one that does not lead to net gains and reinforcement for that child. That's not a good idea. It's setting yourself up to have to do extra work later. And it leads us to do things like thinking that pairing is a separate process from assessment. It's not. Pairing and assessment can happen simultaneously if we change this one core thing of cold probes aren't bad, or cold probes are bad. Teaching is not bad, and it's never bad. Measurement is the problem we have to solve. Not should we or shouldn't we teach the kid how to do this? That's the wrong question. And our current practices have led us into getting stuck in bad questions. And that's a bad question. And we shouldn't be even considering that as a relevant or real question inside of our assessment process.
Let me just, stop you there and try to translate. اوكي. هو هنا بيتكلم على ايه المفروض بقى المبادئ اللي تبقى عندي عشان خاطر اقدر ان انا اعمل تقييم سلوكي مختلف، تقييم سلوكي ناجح. وهنا اهم حاجة، اول حاجة مبدأ لازم ابقى عارف ان اللي هو الفحص المبدئي اللي احنا بنقول عليه البروبين، خلاص ده يعتبر آه، ضعيف جدا قصاد، لان هو مش بيظهر كل قدرات الطفل، او ممكن يديني خلاص يعني زي معلومات مغلوطة شوية عن الطفل. كمان التدريس بالعكس، او التدريب الاساسي هو حلو جدا. فبيقول لك مثلا انت ممكن الطفل يجي لك، فانت مطلوب ان هو يقعد معاك في التقييم، وانت شايف ان هو قدراته على ان هو يعمل يقوم بالطلب، هو قدراته ضعيفة جدا وأهله عارفين، وهو عايش مثلا بقاله كذا سنين مع أهله، وهو مش قادر يعبر عن نفسه عن احتياجاته في الطلب ويطلب. فأنت بتبقى قاعد عارف ده، وهم أهله تقريبا عارفين ده، وهو بتبتدي إن أنت بتشتغل معاه بنفس الطريقة التقليدية. فهو لما هتشتغل معاه بنفس الطريقة التقليدية هنا هيقول لك ده زي أي حد عدى عليا قبل كده كأخصائي، هو هنا زيه. فده مش هيكون يعني اللي هو اللي بنقول عليه في الاقتران، مش هيبقى حاجة كويسة ان انت تبدأ معاه زي ما كل الناس بتبدأ معاه، فبالتالي هيقول لك ما هو ده زي اي حد، فبالتالي الاقتران مش هيحصل. وده حاجة مهمة جدا جدا جدا. انا ليه اصلا اعمل؟ بيقول لك ان التقييم بيحصل من اثناء الاقتران. الاتنين مش منفصلين، مش بعمل الاول اقتران وبعد كده هو تعمل تقييم. لا، انا بعملهم هما الاثنين متوازيين ماشيين مع بعض، لان هو انا بقعد معاه بقيمه وفي نفس الوقت ببني علاقة وطيدة معاه. وهنا أنا المطلوب مني إن أنا أكون متفاهم لحالة الطفل، وأكون بلاحظه كويس وبجمع داتا كويس، وكمان إن أكون بوطد علاقتي مع الطفل. ودي هنا أهم حاجة، لأن هو التدريب ده حاجة مهمة جدا جدا جدا، لكن الفحص المبدئي ممكن يظلم الطفل ويظلم قدراته، ويخليك تكون فكرة، أو هو كمان يكون فكرة عنك ان هو انت تقليدي، وانت مش هتقدر تغير الفكرة دي عنه لما تيجي تشتغل فعلا على ان انت تنجح في الاقتران معاه. اوكي جو.
Okay, tile one down. A couple of these relate, and we don't need to go in as much detail on all of them. The next one is don't waste the learner's time, top down, bottom up options. This is based on information that you have about the learner. So if my approach to assessment is I run the same items with you as I do with a kid, as with another guy and another guy and another guy, my approach is not being sensitive to known information. My approach is being dictated by a tool independent of the context of the learner. And that's a problem. We should be able to identify from our tools what is likely to be something that is relevant and can be scored on, or what's unlikely to be something that will be scored on, that would be a waste of the learner's time and the waste of our time. So you need to have points of entry and criteria for what items you run with which learners.
give planning.
Yes, a very good plan.
اوكي let me just change something. وبيقول كل النقط دي يعني غالبا مش هنحتاج ان احنا نستعرضها لان احنا اتكلمنا عليها اوريدي من الاول. لكن احنا هنا بنتكلم بقى اهم حاجة هنا ان التخطيط الجيد لجلسة التقييم مثلا، ان انا اكون محضر ادواتي، ان انا اكون عارف انا هشتغل ايه العناصر اللي هشتغلها مع كل حالة او مع كل طفل لوحده. كمان هنا ان انا اكون محدد كويس ايه الترتيب اللي انا همشي بيه. دي كلها حاجات اسمها التخطيط الجيد لجلسة تقييم، ودي اهم حاجة اكتر. كمان بتديك كمان مساحة وحرية كافية ان انت تقدر ان انت ترتب الشغل بتاعك وان هو يطلع فيه احسن صورة، وكمان ان انت تاخد بيانات ومعلومات صادقة اكتر. وهنا دي الفكرة بتاعت ان انت ترتب وتخطط كويس لجلسة التقييم بتاعتك. اوكي جو ahead.
Awesome. I actually kind of, could you read each tile to them and see which one they want me to explain more of?
Yeah. Okay. هنا زي ما هو بيقول يعني اقراها ليكوا لو في حد عنده سؤال مش فاهمها مثلا، عشان خاطر بس ما ناخدش وقته اكتر من كده. هنا ان احنا ما نضيعش وقت المتعلم، يعني يا اما امشي بالترتيب الافق، الترتيب من الاول للاخر، يا اما ترتيب من الاخر للاول. كمان ان ادوات القياس او نظام القياس اللي انا هقيس بيها الهدف بتاعي، زي مثلا ان هو يكون بالنسبه، او ان انا بقيس الكمون، او بقيس مده حدوث سلوك، او بقيس او اي مقاييس تانية من ادوات القياس. كمان هنا الموافقة، إن يكون الطفل عنده موافقة على إن هو أنت قاعد بتشتغل معاه خلاص، وإن هو موافق على جلستك. ودي حاجة إيه يعني، قبل كده في محاضرات سابقة اتكلمنا عليها إن أنا ما أقدرش أشتغل مع الطفل حاجة وهو قاعد مش حابب إن هو يقعد أو مش حابب إن هو يشتغل. لازم أختار الوقت المناسب للطفل وهيئه. اللي هو هنا كمان ان هو يقدر يدافع عن نفسه. خلاص دي لازم تكون من اهم المعايير والمبادئ اللي انا فاهمها وانا بشتغل مع اي طفل واي حالة في جسد. لو هو مش حابب حاجة يقول، او اديله ان هو مش حابب حاجة فيختار ان هو يقدر ان هو يختار حتى لو مش بيتكلم بصور او باشارات وهكذا. كمان القدرة على إن أنا أعدل من طرق التدريب بتاعتي عشان خاطر تناسب احتياجاته هي. دي أهم حاجة برضه. كمان الوقت، اختيار الوقت المثالي عشان خاطر أقدر إن هو أخليه فعلا يعني يقدر يتعلم إن هو يتحمل قدرته على إن هو يعني يتعلم كذا، يقعد في جلسة ويتحملها، وكمان إن هو يقدر يشتغل بصورة سليمة. كمان قياس قدرته على إن هو يعني يتحمل التغيير اللي بيحصل والمرونة اللي عنده عشان خاطر لما يكون عنده مهارات وقادر إن هو يقدر يتحمل يعني يقوم بالمهارة دي في أماكن مختلفة مع في سياقات مختلفة. دي هنا اللي هو بنتكلم عليه في الترانزيشننج، أو في قدرته على إن هو يتكيف ويكون عنده مرونة مع البيئة. كمان الإجراءات هنا لازم تبقى محددة وسليمة، وقادر إن أنا أنفذها بحذافيرها عشان خاطر لما يكون في أي حاجة لازم أذكرها. أنا اضطريت إن أنا أغير إجراء بإجراء تاني أنا شايف إن هو أكثر ملائمة مع الطفل، يبقى أنا هنا لازم أذكر الإجراء دوت وهنا دي حاجة اسمها اللي هي دقة وصحة البيانات. تمام. اوكي go ahead.
Okay, so you read each of them to them.
Yeah.
Can you ask which ones people would like to hear
هل
more
في
about?
حاجة هنا هو حابب يعرف، هل في حاجة هنا من اللي اتذكرت دي محتاجين تفهموها أكتر عشان هو إذا كان يشرحها أو لأ، يا إما يتابع على الموضوع اللي بعده، عشان بس اختصارا للوقت. لا so I guess my translation worked.
Uh-oh, they're a little choppy. Can you guys still hear me okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So everyone feels good about those? No real questions?
Yeah, because I already translated and tried to say what I already, you know, figured.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So if any come up, we can totally chat it out. But those are the general features that we
Mhm.
think an assessment process needs to really be able to achieve that goal of
Mhm.
being person-centric and moving with people across their skill sets and abilities across their lifespan.
Yeah.
Our current empirical validation, we've worked with over 400 learners with this. We've worked with every diagnostic kind of scenario that you could imagine,
Mm.
including people with absolutely no diagnoses, people who have more than 5 to 7 combined diagnoses of every type.
Yeah.
Um, We used this in a day habilitation program, and then we looked at part of that model. Those are social programs for adults with disabilities who can't work, who can't entertain themselves at home during the day, and they need a place to go and socialize. And part of that model is you have to have a skill that you're teaching that is every year the team comes together and selects that skill.
Mhm.
Well, when we looked at average programs, they were mastering that one skill every 3 to 5 years. So they were continuing to try to teach this skill for 3 to 5 years. And what we saw was a 10 times increase in skills mastered per year when we moved to actually selecting those based on a good assessment. Implemented in 4 external organizations from our own organization, 3 adult services. Well, actually, it's 5 now. That number is kind of a disconnect. So it's 5, 1 ABA that's center-based, and then 1 traditional EIBI that is home-based.
So it's 7 external organizations.
Yeah. Yeah, the number keeps changing. It keeps growing.
Great,
We've got a couple
great,
more who just came on too. So it's gonna keep growing and growing.
great.
One peer-reviewed case comparison of using Generate Rapid Skill Building versus treatment as usual for 2 children with ASD. That's in review. It's one of those
Yeah,
articles. Test retest is completed in review. That is available as a dissertation, though. Stu
yeah,
Law, who's the other co-creator. We have 3 creators, Stu Law, myself, and Marcela Polaris. That's Stu's dissertation, which he did under the advisement of Dr. Steve Hayes. If you're familiar with ACT and RFT, that was
yeah.
his advisor. So Steve is part of this journey with us because we're very much based on relational frame theory for our complex verbal
Wow.
section. So
Yeah.
there is that
We're
dissertation.
gonna have it soon.
So that dissertation is available. It's a doozy. It's real big. But if you really like reading, it's a great read.
Yeah, great.
Um, So yeah, that's our general empirical validation that we've been going
Yeah.
through so far. So,
So you didn't mention the increase of NCR. Would love to have that.
oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that's one that is in progress
Mhm.
also, but that is sampled in the dissertation. There's a little bit of that
Mhm.
shared in there, but the bigger of that will be coming out in the literature base, hopefully in the next 6 months.
Okay, great. هنا أداة التقييم يعني متحددة على إن هي آه، دي الحاجات اللي قدرت إن هي تحققها، إن هو أكتر من 400 متعلم اتعمل له تقييم بيها من سن 2 ل 68 سنة. مختلف التشخيصات كلها لأكتر من 7 سنين. كمان في تضاعف عدد المهارات المنجزة 10 مرات في مختلف الأعمار. كمان دلوقتي كان المفروض 4 بس، بيقول إن هو في 7، وفي ناس في مراكز أكتر وشركات أكتر بتستخدم أداة التقييم ديت بالفعل. كمان في دراسة اتعملت، دراسة مقارنة ما بين أداة التقييم الخاصة بيه والأساليب اللي هي وأدوات اللي هي التقليدية أكتر. في خلال مقارنة ما بين حالتين توحد و ما يعني مثبتة. كمان إن هو اتعمل كمان أكثر من يعني تقريبا دراسة بحثية على إن هي اتعملت على مدى فعالية أداة التقييم. كمان إن في هم اللي شغالين دلوقتي على إن هم بيحاولوا يثبتوا ممكن تطلع كمان دراسة كمان بعد 6 شهور لسه ما كملتش، هي إن هو في زيادة في التعزيز الغير مشروط. كمان في سحب المساعدات، في التعزيز اللي هو يعني مش مؤجل خلاص. فده كله لسه بيتثبت مدى فعالية أداة التقييم في تحقيق كل الأهداف دي. أوكي يا جماعة.
Awesome. We have such an insane amount of data that it's always really hard for me to figure out in brief windows that I have with people, like what I should even share. We created a learning center model that is driven by this assessment process that is only 4 hours for assessment and then 24 hours for skill building. So it's a total of 28 hours that happens over 4 months. So it's a low dosage model when you compare it to traditional early intensive behavioral intervention that is 15 to 40 hours per week. So some of our initial findings from surveys of parents post in our first cohort of 5 that we did was, hey, they found that the assessment alone lived to the idea of we have realistic things that we can use with our kid right now. So sadly, in American service spaces, assessment has become a box to check before you can start working with the kid. And so when parents hear about assessment now, they hear another barrier they have to jump over before their kid can get help. And what we want to do is reposition that assessment can provide help, it can provide relief itself, and it can give you meaningful information that you can do stuff with.
Yeah.
So this is a little sampling of that survey data. I'll let
اه.
you just kind of go over it real quick if you want.
yeah. هنا بيتكلم على ان دي يعني اسئله استقصائيه معموله على ان التخطيط بتاع المهاره. آه، هنا على بيقول يعني ان هو في مجموعه بيانات كتير جدا 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 خاصه بيها. لكن هنا هل هو مثلا مجموعه اسئله بتتسال على ان ايه هو شايف التخطيط الجيد لتعلم المهاره. هنا هل انت متوقع مثلا ان انت تحقق انهي ان انت تطبق انهي استراتيجية داخل أداة التقييم في خلال 60 يوم. هل هنا سؤال تاني برضو في الاستقصاء ان هو هل تقدر ان انت ترشح التقييم دوت لأي ولي أمر تاني. هل ان انت شايف ان أداة التقييم اللي هي الخاصة بينا دي هي كانت مساعدة اكتر بالنسبة لأدوات التقييم التانية؟ هل هنا انت قدرت سؤال اخير ان هو هل قادر تتعلم منه معلومات جديدة عن المتعلم بتاعك او عن الطالب بتاعك ذات نفسه؟ وهكذا. دي كلها آه، مجموعة أسئلة بتبحث في مدى فعالية أداة التقييم الحقيقية. اوكي جو ahead.
Okay, perfect. And then when we kind of scale that up, after we do that 24 hours of service, that
مهم.
again is only 2 hours per week. That's all we're doing over 12 weeks. We ask a kind of simple question of what was the impact that you saw? And 4 is major impact, decreased level of assistance significantly. And 5 is, hey, my kid's kind of different. Like my day to day, my life with them, their way that they interact with the world is functionally different. So
Mhm.
the fact that we only get fours and fives out of the over 50 learners that have gone through this model over the last 2 years is pretty crazy.
Yeah, because it's major impact. Yeah.
Yeah.
مم. هو هنا طبعا بالأسئلة الاستقصائية دي قدرت تثبت إن مثلا في حوالي 33% التقييم أحدث معهم يعني فعالية كبيرة جدا. خلاص. من هنا قدر إن هو يتطور معاه، وحسنت المعيشة وطريقة حياتهم. كمان 67% هي ع- إن هو حسنت طريقة معيشتهم بشكل يفوق ال يعني اسمه يفوق التوقعات. إن هم قدرت فعلا تحدث مع الطالب خلاص تغيير حقيقي وجذري من كل مختلف ال50 طفل اللي طبقوا عليهم وعلى أولياء أمورهم الدراسة الاستقصائية دي. Okay, go ahead.
Awesome. So, given the speed at which this service goes, one thing that's kind of important to think about is with the service model that we've created, the short-term low dosage model, our wait lists in America right now are 9 months for early intensive behavioral intervention to 18 months, 9 to 18 months. We can do this whole service within 4 months. So one of the ways that we've been working with autistic learners is while they're on a wait list for early intensive behavioral intervention, we can do this with them. We don't offer early intensive behavioral intervention in our organization, but for our community, there's a lot of providers, over 59 in our immediate community, but they all have this waitlist problem. And so one area where we're seeing it work pretty well is to solve, like when a family contacts you, what if you had a short-term low dosage option that they could at least get while you're dealing with the waitlist? So that's one of the usages for this with the autistic population that we're seeing quite a lot of benefit for at this moment in time.
Yeah, definitely. It gives like have more opportunities to, not to be on the wait list and actually
Yes,
work.
yes.
Yes.
There's immediacy and it allows you to kind of go, yep.
Yeah, great. هنا كمان بيقول لك ان فعلا الفعاليه بتاعتهم لان هي في طبعا دايما لوائح انتظار عشان خاطر الشخص يقدر يدخل ابنه الخدمه بتاعت الجلسات والتقييمات. في اصلا في امريكا في ويتنج ليست او لائحه انتظار بتقعد مستني على ان انت تخش البرنامج من 9 شهور ل 18 شهر. لكن هم عندهم في باستخدام الخدمات بتاعتهم وأدوات التقييم اللي هي موضوعنا النهاردة، قدروا إن هم يقللوا لائحة الانتظار دي إلى 4 شهور. فاللي بيختار معاهم الجلسات وبيختار معاهم الخدمات خلاص كمان إن هم بيحقق أكثر فعالية كمان على المستوى الخدمة نفسها. إن هو بدل ما يقعد يستنى لحد 18 شهر سنة ونص، هو بس هي 4 شهور ويقدر يلتحق بالخدمات. Okay, go ahead.
So, where can you start to make meaningful changes in your assessment process? Some things that you want to know about assessments before or while you're using them. If you haven't answered that yet, that's fine. You want to know very clearly what is the target audience? What were the assumptions during development that are built into that? And that can be a little hard to figure out, but you do want to have some language around that. What's the empirical support and the methodologies that have been used to evaluate that tool to this point in time? What are some of the potential misapplications or ways that that assessment could be utilized that is counterproductive to what you're trying to accomplish? What are the things that get in your way to implementing it and the common struggles for implementation of that assessment inside of the context of your service delivery? And then what are the learner profiles that it works well with and that it actually adds and gives valuable information that you can do something with?
هنا ايه هي المعلومات اللي لازم تبقى عندك لما تيجي تعمل تقييم؟ طبعا اهم حاجة الحالة المستخدمة عليها او المستهدفة للتقييم. كمان افتراضاتك عن التطور اللي عنده، كمان متوقعاتك. كمان ان انت تبقى في ان شاء الله كمان طرق الدعم اللي انت هتقدمها خلال التقييم. كمان ايه المفروض عندك الحاجات اللي هي المعوقات اللي موجودة عنده للتطبيق. كمان الخصائص اللي موجودة عند المتعلم ده اللي انت محتاج ان انت تعرفها كلها. اوكي جو.
So, one great strategy, and the ISCA and the SBT is bringing a lot of awareness to this, which we're pretty thankful for. But using semi-structured interviews as a starting place for the selection criteria of what assessment package you want to provide and deliver. And ensuring that you've built your semi-structured interview in a way that allows you to make informed decisions about what's the assessment package.
هنا كمان ازاي بقى التقييم بيغير المعلومات اللي عندك عن الطفل او عن الحالة. هنا طبعا المقابلات اللي هي المقابلات الشخصية هي دي ممكن تغير من الخبرة التقييمية اللي انت محتاج تاخدها. Okay, go ahead.
So in our Generate platform and our assessment approach, this is actually our semi-structured interview is the first thing that you do. And then the
مم.
first report that you get out of it is, hey, what are the domains of our assessment that we're going to run with this learner? What are the domains that they're currently presenting strong in? And then what are the domains that you decided you're not going to run? So we've taken what is traditionally a clinical decision and we've created processes to document and follow that clinical decision so that we have awareness and understanding of the clinical decision across time.
ده هنا كمان بيقول لك ان المقابله هي اللي بتحدد لك، ساعات ممكن تغير لان هنا مثلا زي ما احنا شايفين المجالات اللي اتذكرت هي دي اللي هتغير طريقه او اللي هتخليك تركز اكتر عليها خلال التقييم. مجموعه المجالات زي ما احنا شايفين في مجال المهارات المحوريه، في مجالات القدرات اللغوية، ومجالات الحركة، ومجالات التواصل. اوكي جوهر.
Awesome. And then in ours, we're also able to drill into our pinpoints or the individual items of the assessment based on that information. So here what you're seeing is a cluster or a structure of a hierarchy of skill sets. When I reference the top up, bottom down approach, what that means is you could either start here with this item with can the learner engage in guided meditation, which is PRS 1.11, or you could start with completed stretch goals with multiple challenges. I don't have to run all three with every learner to be able to answer the question of can the learner engage in these things? I can do one, I could do all three of them, I could do two of them, but I can match the learner based on where they're at because my pinpoints are structured to flow logically with each other.
جريت. هو هنا كمان قدرتي على ان انا يعني اعدل في الهدف عشان خاطر يقدر يلائم او يوائم مع مجموعة تحديات موجودة عند الطالب او موجودة عند الحالة اللي انا بشتغل معاها. دي أهم حاجة موجودة، لأن أنا هنا محتاج إن أنا أعدل وأعمل تكيف للهدف مع عشان يوائم الاحتياجات بتاعت الحالة بتاعتي عشان أقدر أحققها معاه تحقيق ذا فايدة وذا معنى. أوكي جو ahead.
So we can ask the question of how do graphical displays influence the understanding of people? And then we can look at some of the common graphical displays that are used in assessment. And one thing that's important to understand is that these all have a limit or a top end. And the question of is the goal to fill in all these boxes is a legitimate question when we arrange our instruments in this way. So in that top one, is the peak to fill in the triangle, or is it to get the right things in the triangle to let you do effective action?
هنا السؤال بتاعي، هل أنا قادر إن أنا أعمل بياناتي، أجمع بياناتي بشكل لازم؟ يعني هنا مجموعة الأهداف اللي عندي ليها سقف. لو عند حضرتك سؤال تقدر تذكره يعني. تمام. هو قال هو ممكن مسموح إن أنت تقول السؤال بتاعك، سواء أنت عايز تقوله يعني ما حابب ان انت تقوله بالعربي وانا اترجمه، او ان انت عاوز تسأله. يعني هو قال ده في اول المحاضرة يعني. فلو في عند حضرتك سؤال مفيش اي مشكلة خالص. فنكمل. هو هنا ان انا قادر ان انا اوضح الاهداف اللي عندي، هل هو بس سقف توقعاتي لحد مهارة معينة او ما اوصل فيها لحد معين وخلاص؟ هي دي الفكرة بتاعت ادوات التقييم اللي هي عبر مدى حياة الانسان كلها. اوكي، جو ahead.
So what we ended up with, which is what we call a skillgram, how we solve that problem of are you trying to fill up all the boxes is we wanted to get into an extremely concrete milestone that sets the parameter for comparison. So what we see here is based on real data, an actual situation that we had where we had a learner who was in their 20s. They lived in institutional care sitting and they wanted to stay home alone for 10 to 15 minutes. That was pretty important to them. They didn't want to have to get in the car every time anybody had to run any errands. And they felt they could do it, but their team thought that they didn't have the skills. And were there a lot of things that a lot of people who stay home alone can do that this person can't do? Sure. But are those necessary components to being safe in that environment for that time period is a really different question. So the home alone goal, that orange, is actually the benchmark of the minimum entry to be able to do that we were able to come up with sampling a wide array of learners. And what we see is that this learner skill sets, before ever doing skill building, before targeting anything, is already exceeding that goal. So what we did in this situation was we didn't recommend skill building. We didn't say you have to learn all this crap. Instead, we had to facilitate a conversation about risk and dignity and what the team was comfortable with because it was abnormal to take that risk in the service setting. It's a really different conversation. But the neat thing is you could actually see that the person scores above. Now, if you think about the VB map and you think, okay, my kid wants to enter into school and go to kindergarten, the VB map for kids who are entering into school is almost completely filled, right? Especially if you think about preschool. So if the goal is that it has to be completely filled up, you can never see that the child is beyond that goal. It's impossible to graphically see that when we limit the parameters of the graphic display. So this is an example of how we freed up those by using moving targets for comparison that are based off of what the learner wants.
Okay, let me translate that. هو هنا مثلا بيتكلم على ان عشان سقف المهارة لا ممكن ما نكونش مثلا هنوصل له نكونش واقف عند حد معين محصور بفئة عمرية أو توقعاتي. هما هنا اعتمدوا في أداة التقييم على حاجة اسمها السكيل جرام، أو اللي هو التقدير بتاع المهارة. وهنا هو أكثر حساسية وأكثر دقة، لأن هما هنا بيعتمدوا على إيه؟ هو بيذكر مثال إن جالهم حالة في العشرينات والاهل طالبين منه ان هو يتعلم مهارة ان هو بس يقعد في البيت لوحده، قادر ان هو يقعد في البيت لوحده لمدة من 10 دقايق ل 15 دقيقة. وهنا الاهل قال ان هم مش مضطرين كل ما يجوا يشتروا حاجة او يحبوا ينزلوا يجيبوا طلب ان هو يجي معاهم ويقعد في العربية وهكذا. هم محتاجين ان هو يتعلم المهارة دي عشان تبقى الحركة بالنسبة لهم اقل صعوبة. فهنا قرروا ان هم مش بس ان هم بيعتمدوا. هل معنى كده ان في اطفال تانية قادرة ان هي تعمل كده؟ بس هنا انا بوائم الهدف ازاي؟ بوائم الهدف على حسب احتياج الأهل، واحتياج الطفل نفسه، إن هو المفروض إن يكون في يتعلم ده، لأن البيئة بتاعته مطالباه بدوت، وهو كمان قادر إن هو ينفذ ده. فمجموعة البيانات اللي موائمة للبيئة عشان خاطر يتعلم المهارة دي هي مهمة جدا جدا جدا، ولازم أخد في اعتباري إن احتياجات الطالب واحتياجات الأهل مهمة جدا جدا جدا، لازم أدمجها مع تقدير المهارة اللي أنا عاوزة أعلمها له. أوكي، go ahead.
Here we have another example. And this is an example where we can zoom in into a single domain. So our pivotal skills domain is then created of multiple subdomains, and those subdomains are created of a bunch of individual pinpoints. And so we can see specifically where the disconnects are and where they're not. Our foundational discrimination section is actually that assessment that we talked about from 1977, the ABLA. It's actually that assessment modified to a free operant arrangement based on some research that was done from Stu and from his previous graduate advisor, Dr. Williams. So we actually incorporated the ABLA just inside of that one little branch inside of that bigger branch.
مم. هنا كمان مثال تاني على إن هم قدروا إن هم مثلا يبقى فيه مجال عام وتحت منه أو مهارة محورية وتحت منها مهارات تانية متفرعة. وهنا دي قدر مثلا ان هم يستخدموا فيها هنا ممكن نستخدم أداة تقييم زي اللي احنا ذكرناها قبل كده، اللي هي ال ABLA، اللي هي قادرة على ان هي تستخدم كل المهارات ديت، أو أدوات تقييم إنها تقيم المهارات الخاصة بس بالمهارات الفرعية اللي تحت المهارة الفرعية. وهنا هي الجزء بتاع تقدير المهارة اللي متوقعة من الطفل أو متوقعة من الطالب إن إحنا نستخدمها. أوكي، جو ahead.
Here's an example of a child who was starting kindergarten and where that child was at when we started with them. So we had very clear directions on what gaps we needed to close. And we were able to make recommendations on, hey, really need to focus in on closing these pivotal skill gaps. And we need to really get those foundational learning skills kind of up to speed before we move forward with that goal.
اوكي جريت. هنا كمان بالنسبة مثلا لحالة طفل كان محتاج ان اهله محتاجين ان هو يبدأ الحضانة ويدخل الحضانة، فهنا برضو هي التقدير بتاع مقدار المهارة اللي عنده عشان خاطر يقدر ينفذ الخطوة دي المفروض إن هنا على المهارات المحورية زي ما احنا شايفين في المثلث، إن هو يبقى عنده مهارات محورية، مهارات حركية، وكمان مهارات لغوية أكثر تركيبا. أوكي جو ahead.
Here we have kind of a fun goal. Someone wanted to get a dog, and their family was very against them being responsible for a dog. But we were able to see, hey, we're pretty close in a lot of the areas. And so the fact that this person feels like they're ready for a dog
Yeah,
is coming from a logical place. The
yeah,
fact that you feel like they're not ready for a dog is also coming from a logical place. Those are both true statements. And can we get clarity on where we need to move to be able to get both of you at the same place? So sometimes we might recommend skill building still, like in this scenario, we still need to build skills, but we also do need to have a facilitated conversation about, hey, the person's not crazy and thinking that they're pretty close because where self-care, like they can take care of themselves, great. They're pretty close on their ability to navigate their community. They're pretty close on their social relationships. So the things that they're responding to are just the different things than the things that the parents were responding to. So sometimes we have to do both. We have to have a facilitate conversation and engage in some skill building.
yeah. هنا مثلا هدف كان المفروض ان هو يتعلم ازاي يرعى طفل، ازاي يرعى حيوان أليف يعني. ان هو يبقى عنده قادر ان هو يربي كلب. فهنا اهم المهارات زي ما احنا شايفين: مهارات محورية، مهارات حركية، مهارات رعاية. لو مش قادر يرعى نفسه، ازاي كمان هيعرف يرعى كلب يعني او حيوان؟ كمان المهارات بالنسبة لتطور المهارات بالنسبة للمعوقات مثلا اللي ممكن هتبقى عنده. كمان المهارات اللغوية، كل اللي جوه المثلث البرتقاني هي مجموعة المهارات اللي عنده، اللي نقدر بيها إن احنا نستخدمها عشان خاطر نطور بيها المهارة المطلوبة مننا أو الهدف المطلوب مننا إن هو يقدر يرعى حيوان. أوكي، جو ahead.
And here's another example where we're looking at entry-level employment, and we can kind of see the things that are really close, the things that are a little bit far away. That I
Mhm.
wanted to include this example of kind of when we're doing our report writer, like that little entry-level employment. That's a drop-down function that has all of our uploaded comparison criteria. Our goal is to eventually have everything that's important to humans in there. But clearly, we're starting with things that have been relatively important. There's also a lot of questions as far as like how do these things change across different cultures? Like being ready to work in America is probably very different than being ready to work in Mexico, which is really different than being ready to work in Norway. And there's probably cultural features of these milestone comparisons that hopefully, if we ever get to the place where the VB map is and we have mass implementation, that we can be adjusting and learning and growing without always having to change the core function. But the milestone is a function that allows us to grow the instrument to need without needing to always go back through revalidation. We envision having to do both, but we want mechanisms that let growth happen pretty quick.
هنا كمان زي ما احنا شايفين هدف تاني، ان هو مثلا يكون قادر على ان هو يحصل على وظيفة. وهنا ده مجموعة المهارات طبعا المختلفة، هو كمان غير ان هي مختلفة كمان يبقى قادر على ان هو مثلا عنده قدرة من الرعاية من الذات، وقدرة لغوية عالية طبعا، وان هو قادر ان هو يكون علاقات، ومهارات محورية كتير لازمة للتعلم. وكمان بيقولك انها مختلفة من ثقافة لثقافة. فممكن مثلا السن الحصول على عمل في أمريكا غير سن الحصول على العمل في المكسيك غير سن الحصول على العمل في النرويج. فبالتالي هنا الاختلاف الثقافي مهم جدا إن احنا نراعيه كمان في هدف زي الأهداف اللي هي فيها جزء أكثر ثقافة. Okay, go ahead.
Another example of entry-level employment. Just went over that one, so that's fine. So you might not have milestones for the assessments that you use, but I do highly recommend starting the process of getting them if you're going to continue to use them across diverse learner needs. And it's a pretty simple concept, but it does take some work and it takes designing your assessment systems in a way that you're condensing information across deliveries. So as we talked about, it's crazy that there's, over 800,000 uses of the VB map happening per year, and we haven't changed anything from that information. But the 50 usages of the VB map that you're using with your population, if you set it up right and you're condensing that information over time, you could be growing comparisons. You could be looking at kids who join a sports team. What have I seen the VB map tell me about that and show me about that? So one of our partners, Dr. Contreras, at the University of Nevada, Reno, she is doing a replication of our Learning Center site with her graduate students. And one of the things that she presented on was, hey, what would this look like if you wanted to take the same logic and apply it to the VB map? So she took the example of a ballet class and benchmarking what are the things that you would need to be successful in a ballet class off of a couple of expert performers. So now instead of, hey, if I want my daughter to join and be able to go to community settings to learn cool stuff with her friends, I don't need to fill out all levels of the VB map. What I need to fill out is this yellow part. And that's what we need to be chasing down. That doesn't mean teaching to the VB map. It means creating learning experiences that are going to generate those skill sets to be able to perform in the context of the ballet. But you can do the same logic with any instrument you want if you're setting it up for that across your administrations.
هو هنا كمان مثلا لو أنا عندي هدف مش موجود مثلا، بس أنا محتاج أعمل تقييم مثلا من داخل، ففي دكتورة عملت إنها قدرت إنها مثلا تطلع هدف إيه المهارات اللي مطلوبة مثلا لو أنا عاوز أخلي بنتي تدخل تدريب الباليه مثلا وتنجح فيه. فهنا من خلال حتى تقييم البيبي ماب هي قدرت إنها تحدد في النقط الصفراء مجموعة المهارات اللي لازم تبقى عندها من البيبي ماب، من تقييم البيبي ماب، عشان تقدر تنجح في أو تدخل التدريب بتاع الباليه. فزي ما احنا شايفين هنا مثلا الأصفر إن هو القدرة على إن هو يكون في مجموعة عشان هيبقى فيه تدريب جوه مجموعات. كمان القدرة على اللعب، هنا الأصفر عند قدرات اللعب. كمان القدرة على الاستجابة السمعية الجيدة، فمحتاجين مقدار من الاستجابة السمعية عشان تقدر تنفذ اللي هيطلب منها. أه هسأل حضرتك كمان هنا من جوه التقييم تقدر تحصل على مجموعة المهارات اللي لازمة عشان خاطر تقدر تحقق هدف معين. How long is gonna be for the webinar? Because
I
we've
was just
been
wondering that too. Where
لا
to we could probably end whenever. It just keeps going. I mean, depending
so
on
yeah, so
translation,
if
like
you
another.
wanna make it like in conclusion, because obviously we've been like over 2
Yeah,
hours.
it's been a minute. Yeah.
Let's keep going.
Yeah. Okay, probably we can go here. So one thing that you can start looking at is each learner that goes through your system, what assessment package do they get? So if right now you say, hey, I have 10 kids and I use the VB map on all 10 of them, this whole pie is going to be one color. They're all getting the same assessment.
Yeah.
But if you're using several different assessments, you use the ABLES R sometimes, the VB map sometimes, Essentials for Living sometimes, then you just make a package of ABLES R, Essentials for Living, VB map, and that's a different slice. If you want to be getting diversity of the assessment experience, that's a great place to start. Is just tracking and looking at your assessments used with your percentage of learners that you serve. Does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of. I'm just I'm trying to translate and make them understand what I already, trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's a great experience. I'm learning so much.
Oh, yay.
هنا بيتكلم على احنا يعني خلاص هو بيقول ان يعني مش فاضل حاجات كتير. انا بقول له يعني احنا نقدر نختصر لان احنا بقالنا كتير. مش بيحاول يلخص ان هو اهم حاجه ان مجموعه يعني التنوع في المعلومات اللي بنحصل عليها. لو احنا بنستخدم نفس ادوات التقييم بنعتمد على اداه واحده هيبقى كلها زي ما احنا شايفين في العجله كده كلها لون واحد. لو احنا بنستخدم اداه تقييم واحده، حتى لو احنا بنعتمد على اداتين تقييم، فاحنا برضو هنحصل على مثلا نقدر نميز بينهم باللونين. لكن هنا العجلة مليانة ألوان لأن احنا مش بنستخدم أداة تقييم عادية، لكن هي أداة تقييم مدمجة فيها مهارات كتير جدا بتعتمد عليها في التقييم. أوكي.
Okay, so my general recommendations is make sure you're using a semi-structured interview to document and select what assessments you use and why you make those decisions. This is going to allow you to train other people, other clinicians to do similar work as you step away or as you expand that. And it's going to synthesize what assessments you're using, why, when, and what you're getting out of it. try to identify entry points for the assessments that you use rather than thinking about the concept of standardization. And I have to do this assessment the same way with every
Mm,
learners. Um,
yeah.
Customizing those entry points is going to make the experience a lot better for everybody. Come up with your own customized comparison criteria, like that example of the VB map that we just went over, and create pairing as assessment, not two separate processes. So you should always be engaging and gathering information about your learners. If you have it separated right now in your services, where you're doing like a pairing session and then an assessment session, I would highly think about putting a lot of time in to getting those back together. And then create research on any of the current assessments. There's so little research information out there, as we talked about, that there's so many things that if you turn it into a research project, it would benefit all of us. So if you are inclined or you like research or you want to do research, I would highly explore skill-based assessment as a research domain. And if you ever want to talk about that, please reach out to me and we totally can.
Like it can be, yeah, an opening for doctoral thesis.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. هنا النصايح طبعا مهمة جدا. هو بيحاول إن هو خلال أي تقييم أو خلال أي عملية تقييم إن أنت يبقى عندك منهجية منظمة في أخذ المعلومات في المقابلات اللي هي عشان توثق فيها الحاجات اللي احنا محتاجين، الأدوات اللي احنا محتاجين نستخدمها كتقييم وليه. كمان ان احنا محتاجين هنا اننا نعرف ايه هي يعني هندخل للمهارة منين عشان نقيمها. وهنا دي حاجة مهمة جدا اتكلمنا عليها. كمان المقارنات، خلاص، اللي هي بعدل فيها على حسب حالة الطفل وعلى حسب البيئة اللي أنا عايزها. كمان ان انا زي ما قال قبل كده ان هو انا بقرن الاقتران مع التقييم، الاتنين بيشتغلوا في طريق واحد، وبقدر اعملهم بشكل متوازي مع بعض، ما افصلش الاقتران عن التقييم. كمان ان انا قادر ان انا اعمل بحث على اي أداة تقييم. دي مهمة جدا جدا جدا، لان هو بيقول انها تقدر تفيد الناس كلها لما تعمل دراسة بحثية عن اي أداة تقييم، لان هيكون متوفر عندي معلومات اكتر عن كل أداة تقييم. وانا بقول له ان هي دي ممكن تبقى مثلا زي أداة التقييم بتاعته النهاردة، ان هي تبقى مفتوحة إن أنت تقدر تعمل عليها مثلا رسالة ماجستير أو دكتوراه أو أي رسالة بحثية. وهو بيذكر إن لو حد عايز يعني أي معلومات عنها أكتر وحابب إن هو يدرسها بشكل متعمق أكتر وشكل علمي أكتر، هو ممكن يقدر يتواصل معاك. Can you write down your email so they can, reach for you if someone wants?
You
Yes.
guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I put the contacts in there.
Yeah.
I do value myself on trying to be fast with my email.
Yeah, actually, you do. Actually, this is the first one you already answered when I, dispatch all the
Yeah.
whole emails. Yes, you were the one that responded at the same time, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I do try really hard to be receptive to my emails.
I have the same goal with my WhatsApp.
Yeah, I need
Yes.
to get on WhatsApp. I've had a couple people asking me for it, and I just have not done that yet. So
Yeah.
I need to get on that game and get better at that. But my email, I try really hard to be receptive to. LinkedIn, I try to be receptive to. I put our Generate homepage there.
Mm.
And then I also put the Quality ABA School, which is a really fun group that I've joined in the past month. It's free to join.
Yeah, I already
There's a lot
met
of
you on that. Yeah, thanks
yeah,
to that. Yeah.
there's a lot of
Yeah,
good
no, Matthew is
conversations.
great, actually. Yes.
Yeah. So
Mm.
that's not my group, but I do just think it's a cool group to join. So
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah,
not active on
definitely.
there,
I'm
check
gonna
it out.
do a recommendation post on that soon. Yes.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, great.
That's great.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then if you want to use our assessment or generate, reach out to me, and we'll talk about that. But right now we're not super live because in America we have to wait until that test retest is accepted. Once that's accepted, we're gonna go full launch in the American market. But uh, if you don't have those barriers and
I'm
you're
just trying to
curious,
get
you want to
the
chat more,
keyword. Yes.
reach
Sorry
out to
about
me.
that. Mm.
Oh, you're okay.
Yeah, okay. ده يا جماعة الكلمة المفتاحية بس عشان they are asking me so much so I need them to do the keyword ده الكلمة المفتاحية هنا تمام كله شايفها اوكي اوكي can you unlock the screen share
Oh, yeah, sorry. It is a stop share.
yeah
There we go.
good okay how is that a keyword right do you see
No.
no
Oh,
okay كله
what'd you
شايف
write?
الكلمة المفتاحية I'm going to show you now yeah now
Yes, generate.
yep
Okay, perfect.
yeah. Okay, great. Thank you so much for today.
Yeah.
Thank you for the valuable information. I've learned so much.
Thank you all
It's
so
it's
much. And I'm sorry
actually
it went so
refreshing.
long,
No,
but
no,
it's
no.
really
We
hard
are just
not to go
having fun,
longer.
but now it's like the eve. It's late in the evening in our
I
time.
know.
Yeah. Okay, and then tomorrow is actually work, so we have to get up early.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Yes.
sorry, guys, but
No, no,
please reach
no.
out. I hope to talk to some more of you.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. So, okay. Have a nice day. We enjoyed so much.
I will.
Okay.
Thank
السلام
you.
عليكم.
Bye, everyone.
عليكم
السلام
السلام.
عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
عليكم
أستاذ إسراء
السلام.
يعطيكم العافية.
الله يخليك.
طبعا
Maybe I have
يعني
one question.
كالعادة وبكل سعادة، يعني ما شاء الله لا قوة إلا بالله، المحاضرة أكثر من رائعة. احنا بصراحة مش عاوزين نقطع حبل أفكار،
اه
في نفس الوقت
للأسف لا
الترجمة
بالظبط بس عشان ما نعطلش وقت
بالضبط
أكتر من كده فعلا
بالضبط وفي
بالظبط
نفس الوقت الترجمة بصراحة أكثر من رائعة، واضح إنه ملخص تماما يعني. احنا بس
اه
يعني حائرين في بعض الكلمات، يعني حتى الانجليزي مش قد كده، فبس يعني احنا طورنا. فهو تطويرنا بس انه يعني يلا بسرعه عشان عايزين نسمع ايه اللي بيحصل.
ده
تمام.
حقيقي
لكن لكن جدا جدا يعني واضح ان ما شاء الله ان في اعداد وفي جهد من حضرتك يعني، وده يعني شهادتنا فيك مجروحه جدا
الله
رائعه.
يخليك
اللهم بارك لك يا رب
الله
العالمين في علمك. ربنا
يخليك
ينفع بيك دوما يا رب العالمين يا رب العالمين.
الله يخليك
سؤالي بكل بساطه برضو متكرر يعني، هل هذه البرامج او هل هذا هذه الدراسه اجريت على بيئات عربيه مثلا، فبالتالي احنا نشجع ونشوف ايه اللي بيحصل ونجربها؟ هل قننت على عينه مثلا عربيه او ما شابه؟
yeah okay
هل في دراسات او في ابحاث؟ لان دايما احنا صدمنا ان البيبي ماب على صيته، لكن ما فيش دراسات تؤكد ان هو مثلا طبق مثلا وقنن ويعني وخضع مثلا لخطوات البحث العلمي. بالعكس ده كان يعتبر مسعف
ان هو
وهكذا يعني.
معمول على البيئة الغربية يعني
تمام تمام،
تمام
الله يجزاك
اوكي
خير
انا هسأله
وجدا
طبعا ما
شكرا
فيش
لك.
مشكلة بس يعني احنا اوريدي عارفين
مم.
الإجابة يعني هو على فكرة
لعل
دكتور
وعسى.
ما يعني أستاذ مارك يعني تعاون كتير جدا في الوطن العربي فأكيد حاطط الخلفية الثقافية كمرجع بس هو يعني برضه لازم
مهم.
أتأكد منه. Okay, I'm gonna
احسن بارك
translate
الله
this
فيك.
question because there is concerns when we see a new assessment tool. Is it been modified to serve, been done on considering the Arabic culture and the the assessment when we are considering the assessment as being generated? Has it been to you know, uh, consider the different cultures.
Yeah.
Hmm,
So I actually 2018 to 2020, I had two Arabic supervisees from Saudi Arabia who
Mm,
were part of piloting some of my initial versions.
mm,
One of the things that we wanted to do was to make sure that we kept bias out of it,
mm,
which then empowers the clinician to adapt features that are relevant.
yeah, definitely.
So that was the feature is that we did have two Arabic students pretty early on in some of the initial parts. We also, one of the developers, uh, Maricela Palares, in between getting her bachelor's degree and getting her master's degree, she went and worked in Kuwait for 2 years.
Mm,
So she also is very relevant on providing ABA services in that space. So I would say on that one, specifically with Arabic culture, yes, but we tried very hard to remove cultural
mm,
biases
yeah,
inside of the pinpoints
definitely.
themselves
Yeah.
and to empower the clinician to be able to adapt things to do that. So even, as an autistic, even some of the things that you wouldn't think have cultural bias, like assessing for eye contact, 100% does. So, like in our assessment, we don't have eye contact as a pinpoint. We have signaled attention as a pinpoint. You have a topography to
Mm,
recruit attention of other people. We have sustained attention. Can you maintain meaningful interaction with other people? But we don't dictate the topography of that. So that same logic extends across our pinpoint infrastructure to allow for a cultural adaptation.
yeah.
But it is ultimately an empirical question. But I want to say, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, definitely. Because since we have already in this time the supervision, all of that, actually the background of consideration is actually enough. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you. هو هنا مستر عبد العزيز بيقول لك هو فعلا كان بيشتغل وكان بيتعاون مع من 2018 ل 2020 على كان عند في مشرفين بيتعاون معاهم من السعودية اتنين
مهم. تمام.
وكمان المشارك معاه الدكتورة المشاركة معاه في تطوير هذه الأداة التقييم كانت اوريدي عندها خبرة في العمل في الكويت لمدة برضو كويسة فعندهم إن هم فعلا عملوا مراعاة للقدرة على إن أنت تستخدم أداة التقييم ديت مع مختلف الثقافات وخصوصا الثقافة العربية بس هم حاولوا إن هم تكون بعيدا عن أي تحيزات فاهمني؟ لأن هي طبعا أداة تقييم لازم تكون موضوعية بس هم طبعا كان في إن
مهم.
هم يراعوا الاختلافات الثقافية وخصوصا الثقافة العربية فده يعني يا ريت
أكيد.
يكون جاوب على
مم.
سؤالك وطبعا ده أهم حاجة Thank you so
تمام، الله
much.
يخير.
Thank you
إليك
so much.
بارك الله فيك، كتر ألف خير.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Have a great day. Been a
Thank you,
wonderful. I
everybody.
I hope it's been a wonderful morning since it's been productive.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, you guys are a great group. I wish we could have
Yeah.
dialogued a little more, but it's just so much to get
Yeah, I'm
into.
gonna
Get
send
everybody on
them
the
all
same page.
the information regarding your email. You can chat
Awesome.
with them with it. Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
because I really like to
Yeah,
talk to people, so it was a little one-sided for my liking, but it's just a lot of info. So hopefully
yeah,
we can continue it and continue to grow. And if anyone wants anything or needs anything, reach out to me.
great. Thank you so much.